There we go.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Montgomery County Delegation Joint Priorities Hearing, aka Open Mic Night, as former Delegation House Chair Ann Kaiser likes to call it. We're doing it a little bit of an unusual format. We're going to record and post because we're having trouble with the live stream. So I guess I don't necessarily need to go through all the logistics of how this is going to work because most of the people aren't in yet to hear them. But just a quick reminder, elected officials get 5 minutes. Representatives of organizations get 3 minutes, individuals get 2 minutes. There will be a timer on the screen, and Chair Kramer or I will prod you along if things are not proceeding according to the schedule. I think Rebecca Stryer and Katie Hardy are our great staff working on this evening. Thank you for your efforts. I think we're letting a lot of people in soon. So just a reminder to everyone here now, and we'll keep reminding them to use the mute function and turn off your camera at appropriate times so we can be sure to focus on the matter before us, which is hearing from people in Montgomery County about the issues that concern them. With that, let me turn it over to Chair Kramer for any introductory remarks and to introduce the first panel.
Thank you for that, Chair Corman. Appreciate the opportunity. Just want to welcome everyone to this hearing of the hardest working delegation in all of Annapolis, and that's the MoCo crew. And I can assure you that you are well represented, and we've got a very talented delegation, and it's an honor to serve with them. And with that, Chair Corman, am I bringing up the first panel?
Please do.
All righty then. We're starting with the following people in the panel. The first one is our County Executive, Mark Elrich, Council President Tom Hucker, our Mayor of Tacoma Park, Kate Stewart, and representing the city of Gaithersburg, Tom Lonergan-Seeger. And I believe that is it on the first panel, each of whom will have 5 minutes. So with that, County Executive Elrich, please rock and roll.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. And thank you for the effort you put in every year to help further Montgomery County's goals in Annapolis. And I do appreciate consistently having our backs. Unlike last year at this time, thankfully, the conditions seem a little less daunting. However, after all we've been through, there's still a feeling of vulnerability and uncertainty with big challenges facing us. While we're all anxious to regain the momentum we lost in the country, in the state, and the county that's been forever changed by the pandemic, moving forward, we can't ignore the disparities the pandemic has highlighted and the obligation to address them. Fortunately for us, we could not have been more committed partners in Annapolis to take on these challenges. And I'm glad that all of you work just not only on the local issues, but on the issues that affect the whole state. Business at hand, you should have a copy of the county's 2022 priorities.
Mr. County Executive, something's going on with your audio.
I can't hear.
Yeah, Mr. County Executive, something's going on with your audio.
Really? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yep.
Okay, try this. So the business at hand, you guys should have a copy of the county's 2022 session priorities on your computers. The document reflects the consensus of both branches of government, so I'll highlight a few points about the priorities before I turn this over to Council President Hucker. First item on the list acknowledges that while we hope the worst of the pandemic is behind us, we're not out of the woods yet. We need to remain focused on the need for shorter term relief, but also supports that'll lead to greater economic resilience by addressing some of the systemic problems that the pandemic highlighted. Given the state surplus this year, I would not expect the need to make any budget adjustments that would negatively impact counties. So please consider the second bullet on the first page as just a friendly reminder. I will say that, the budget surplus does provide the opportunity to address some things in a one-time fashion. I wouldn't use the surplus for ongoing expenses, but it could really help with some of the holes that have been created. On the economic development front, if we're going to remain economic engine of the state, I can't stress enough the importance of partnering with us on initiatives to strengthen the workforce and economic development, including partnering with us on infrastructure investments that will make or break the county's ability to continue to deliver for the rest of the state, not to mention for our own residents. One area in severe need of attention is additional investment in affordable housing in the county. We all know that, affordable housing is largely made possible by government subsidies. Our subsidies are limited. We need the state to play a bigger role. I've got 20,000 households at about $30,000 in income and another 20,000 households under $50,000 in income. These folks have a hard time living here. We need to figure out how we deal with this problem. The roadshow last week is still fresh in everybody's mind. I know there will be members of the public speaking tonight about their transportation priorities. In addition to the statements made by county and municipal leaders last week, the document before you includes a focus list of transportation priorities for the coming session, high-profile transit projects, and support for local transit, pedestrian, and bicycle safety programs. It also makes mention of the long-awaited infrastructure bill that was signed into the law by the president, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. The level of transportation investment authorized in the bill is historic. And while there are some great and direct grant opportunities, most of this money is going to flow through the state. So where we fit in the state's priorities is going to be absolutely critical if Montgomery County is going to get its share of the money and be able to use it for the things we could use it for. Please use your oversight powers to ensure a fair and equitable distribution and allocation of these funds. State investment in our transportation network is key to the county remaining the economic driver that it is. I want to thank you for overriding the blueprint for Maryland veto, which also resulted in the enactment of the Build to Learn Act. The blueprint offers tremendous potential to welcome in a new era for how Maryland approaches the creation and delivery of pre-K through 16 education and workforce development. I know you're going to keep a close eye on the blueprint, and we're looking forward to its implementation. As strong advocates of the Build to Learn Act, we're encountering some challenges. I think you're familiar with some of these. While concessions are made in the bill to help counties already making major financial commitments to public school construction, access these new funds, the county is still struggling. And one of the things that we've talked about, and we came up in an internal discussion today, is we were reviewing the school capital budget for the first time, and we're looking at projects that are rolling up 20 to 40% increases from last year to this year. And those increases aren't because the scope increased or because of mission creep. It's flat out the increase in construction costs in the county. And that may mean that it's a perfect opportunity to put one-time funding in. And it may mean if we can't get that funding that we would use the dollars we'd allocated, but maybe not get all the projects that we intended to get with those dollars. If we can increase the state participation rate in our projects, hopefully county funds can be freed up to help us. So there are a number of moving pieces going on. I also want to ask you to help us address critical shortages of culturally and linguistically proficient support professionals. I think you'll be hearing from Montgomery College about this, but we've been discussing staff shortages, and people who are looking at the labor markets think some of the shortages in teachers, counselors, aides, childcare workers, social workers, that these are going to be long-term, not short-term. And we need to come up with direct programs at the state level to help our university system and our community college system provide this talent in a deliberate way. We've never really done that before. I think now we need to start thinking about what the needs for talent are going to be over the next 5 to 10 years and be able to direct that, direct attention to that. I want to thank your legislation for that would allow earlier canvassing of absentee ballots, since managing high volumes of ballots is really a problem in large councils, particularly counties, particularly Montgomery County. Before I turn it over to President Hucker, I wanted to mention that in addition to Montgomery College projects mentioned in the document, we'll be sending you a more comprehensive list of capital projects. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for that. County Executive Elrich, Council President Hucker. You're muted, sir. Nope, you're back on mute. All right, looks like you're good to go.
Looked like it was controlled. Sorry. Chairman Kramer, Chairman Corman, great to see you and everyone in the delegations, and great to see you last week at the roadshow as well. We all hope this session should be less stressful than the last, but I think it's really important as ever that our lines of communications strengthen. We are really grateful for all your hard work for the county, but I continue to think that we do not do enough to support you and communicate what we could do together to function as a team like other counties do, to make sure you have everything you need and you know what the county is doing in each of your districts with your help to benefit our mutual constituents. I've been a broken record on this topic for years, but I continue to think there's more we could do to improve the county's communication with each of you. I have ideas on that front. I'd love to hear your suggestions as well. I have been tasked tonight with speaking about the environment, public health, public safety, broadband, and local authority. And I should say, due to the fact that it's mid-November, we haven't been able to review much legislation yet. Obviously, my comments are at a very high level, and I hope to be able to come back to you to weigh in on more mature legislation once all the bills are drafted. On the environment, I want to elaborate on what the county exec said about the priority that's been placed on the environment at the local, state, and federal level. We all share this commitment. Just today, President Biden signed the federal infrastructure bill into law, and here in Montgomery County, I announced a bill that will help cut our greenhouse gas emissions by funding energy improvements in buildings. Our proposal would use 10% of our energy tax revenue to leverage private dollars to spark an aggressive new wave of energy efficiency improvements in our building stock. As you know, 4 years ago, Montgomery County set a goal of achieving zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2035 and reducing them 80% by 2027. We are way, way behind on that goal, and we need to catch up. This goal is one we can't afford to postpone. And so we want to urge you to, again, please ensure the funds that will flow to the state from the federal infrastructure bill make it all the way to the county so they benefit our mutual residents. We all have a responsibility to address the climate emergency, so we want to work hand in hand with you and our federal partners in every way. It'll take each of us to meet this challenge. We also want to make sure that we're on the same page, pushing for improvements in recycling requirements and making producers of waste more accountable for their actions. And we urge you to support greater support from the electric utilities and distributors to transition to clean energy sources. On the public health front, the pandemic shone a spotlight on existing county weaknesses and inequities we have seen festering for years. One of those problems is the shortage of inpatient beds needed for those with mental health care needs, particularly our youth who wait months to enter treatment or are simply not served at all. The council has talked about this at quite a few meetings, including one this morning. The state has made some great efforts to address this problem, but the unmet needs are still tremendous. We urge you to focus on this and work with us and the Hospital Association and other stakeholders to settle on a strategy that will result in making meaningful inroads here for this problem that's been around for years. In public safety, thank you all for the hard work over the last year to pass strong and meaningful and overdue police reform legislation. I remember testifying for Leober reform like 8 years ago. We're all very proud of the leadership role that Montgomery County, especially Senator Smith and Senator Waldstreicher, played in the historic reform. We're monitoring that implementation at the county level. We hope you'll be open to addressing any legal and operational challenges that we may encounter in this process, in addition to taking another look at how behavioral health supports could be integrated in the context of reform. And we know juvenile justice reforms will be an important and long overdue discussion that will take place this session as well. We encourage you to include in the discussion prohibiting juveniles from being charged as adults. If we weren't already aware, the pandemic created a huge focus on how important broadband is. The federal government has made a huge financial commitment to expanding that, since the majority of those funds will flow to the state. The state's efforts in the past have focused largely on rural access. We ask that you make sure that allocations plan ensures our urban areas are also eligible to receive funding for infrastructure build out, digital inclusion training, and device programs. Ever since I've been on the council, we've always reminded you as well to protect our local authority in county government. This year, we're doing that as well. In closing, we also know the special session for congressional redistricting will convene soon. Vetoed bills will be taken up. We would really like you to support the override of the MTA bill and the Local Tax Relief for Families Act of 2021. Thank you so much for everything you're doing. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you this evening and all your hard work. We greatly appreciate it. I know all our shared constituents appreciate it as well. And on behalf of all my colleagues on the council, I wish you the best for the upcoming special session, and I hope to continue to talk to you every week. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that, Council President Hucker. Very much appreciate your insights. Mayor Stewart, you are up, ma'am.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm glad to join you all this evening. First, thank you for all your work on behalf of the residents of Montgomery County. The pandemic's health and economic impacts have exacerbated challenges we were already facing as a municipality. As you turn to your work in Annapolis, we appreciate you keeping the city's priorities in mind. Each of these priorities is working toward a common goal of creating strong, vibrant, sustainable communities where residents can live with dignity and thrive. Our priorities include, first, mitigating the impacts of the pandemic on residents and businesses by increasing the ability of renters to access legal counsel and emergency rental assistance, and by providing assistance to directly support residents, businesses, and local government that is simple to apply for and easy to access. Second, increase access to affordable, energy-efficient housing by increasing funding for affordable housing and community development projects, requiring that district courts collect and share data related to evictions to improve programming and neighborhood development efforts, passing just cause eviction legislation and legislation shielding court records related to failure to pay rent judgments, and providing targets and resources to dramatically improve the energy efficiency of low and middle income housing and multifamily buildings. Mitigate the impacts of climate change by passing legislation establishing aggressive statewide targets for climate mitigation and providing resources and technical assistance to municipalities to reach these goals. Facilitating greater use of zero emission vehicles, public transit, and other decarbonizing transportation strategies, and establishing environmental health as a human right. Next, reimagining public safety by continuing to enact reforms that support and hold police accountable, including at the municipal level. And this is a big one, and I echo what Council President Hucker just said, increasing support for behavioral health crisis system that increases the opportunity for intervention by health professionals and minimizes the presence of police. This is an area where the state must take leadership to ensure there is a comprehensive continuum of mental health care for our residents. I cannot stress enough the urgent need for these services. In addition, please encourage timely Purple Line construction and mitigation efforts, continue efforts to meet Vision Zero goals for pedestrian safety, ensure that any legalization of cannabis utilizes revenue to invest in communities disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs, and support efforts to consolidate election ballots. Thank you for your work on behalf of our community, and I look forward to working with you all on these priorities in the future. Thank you.
And thank you, Mayor Stewart. We appreciate that. From the city of Gaithersburg, Mr. Seeger.
Good evening, Chair Kramer, Chair Corman, and members of the Montgomery County delegation. My name is Tom Lonergan Seeger. I serve as the Assistant City Manager here in the great city of Gaithersburg, and I am here tonight on behalf of Mayor Judd Ashman. Thank you for this opportunity to comment this evening on the city's legislative priorities for the upcoming legislative session. Our first recommended priority, revisions to the provisions of HB 670 related to police accountability boards and administrative charging committees. To summarize, this revision would give municipalities the option of creating their own police accountability board and committee that meets the same statutory requirements of the county-created board and committee. We believe that it is important for municipalities to have the option to establish their own accountability board and charging committee for several reasons. Firstly, municipal boards and committees will be more familiar with that police department's regulations and policies. Second, the legislation currently requires accountability boards to work only with county officials and to make recommendations only to county officials. For meaningful review of municipal departments, specific review of municipal trends and practices and recommendations should be made to municipal officials. Finally, at least here in Montgomery County, there is a backlog of disciplinary cases. So requiring Gaithersburg's police department cases to be processed through a county board and committee could lead to substantial delays in disciplinary actions. Our second priority, extension of time to appeal assessments for commercial real property, would authorize a county or municipality to submit a written appeal to the supervisor of assessments regarding a commercial real property assessment within 180 days of the assessment notice. In addition, a county or municipality could appeal a final value or classification in the notice of assessment to the Property Tax Assessment Appeal Board, where the property is located within 180 days from the date of notice. As the pandemic depletes access to revenues while simultaneously requiring increased expenditures, it is critical to provide local government greater access to appeal the state's property assessments and ensure that the basis for tax revenues remains fair and accurate. Delegate Solomon first introduced this legislation during the 2020 session, I believe, and kindly worked with us at that time, along with Delegate Polakovich-Carr, to amend the bill to allow municipalities the same extended appeal timeframes as counties. Delegate Solomon, we would truly appreciate your having identified this solution, and we would love to partner with you however you deem fittest on advocating for this issue once again. Third, we continue to seek your advocacy for traffic relief plans that are in the best interest of the city, among those being intersection improvements at Maryland Route 117 and Watkins Mill Road. The completion of the Watkins Mill interchange is expected to significantly impact the use of State Route 117, also known as Clopper Road. It's our hope that the state will find the resources to make interim improvements to address the immediate safety and travel challenges our residents face. And we are very grateful to those in our delegation who advocated for this project at last week's roadshow meeting. And we respectfully ask that everyone join us in the push for funding and attention in this area. Fourthly, pursuit, a finalization of tax duplication initiatives. While some of what has been owed to Gaithersburg and other jurisdictions has been budgeted in the county's FY22 budget, and a proposal has been put forward to adopt a permanent process for updating formulas and paying rebates, the work is not complete. Finalizing and codifying the updates to the tax duplication program and its formulas must be prioritized. Fifthly, preservation of municipal highway user revenue funding allocation. I know you've heard this quite regularly from us and others, but now more than ever, the city needs every revenue source available to meet our obligations to our residents in the community. Full and permanent restoration of HUR will provide the city with the necessary resources to plan and deliver road maintenance and improvements projects. And finally, maintain local authority over small wireless infrastructure, another routine ask. As you know, we strongly oppose any further state and federal regulations that impede local government from exercising land use authority granted to them. And while not explicitly identified as a legislative priority, we do hope that our D17 representatives will continue to propose and pursue legislation that provides much needed support for the city and state small business community, at-risk residents, and others who have been most acutely impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. We respectfully ask that you continue to consider bills that could potentially benefit those in our community most in need of support. City of Gaithersburg had a very successful session last year, and we thank each and every one of you for your hard work on our residents' behalves. We are extremely grateful to have received $500,000 in last year's capital budget, $250,000 to construct a pedestrian bridge across Great Seneca Highway as part of a public-private partnership with AstraZeneca, as well as $250,000 for the city's Pleasant View Park project. We will continue to discuss potential bond initiatives for this upcoming session with our D17 delegation. So in conclusion, thank you for this opportunity to testify tonight, and for all of you do on behalf of the great city of Gaithersburg, and we look forward to working with you in the months ahead.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Lonergan Seeger. Before we take questions, we did not have anyone sign up from the city of Rockville, but it is my understanding that we now have a Ms. Angela Judge with us representing the city of Rockville. So before we take any questions for our first panel, Ms. Judge, if you are indeed here, you're up.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Good evening, delegation members. Thank you for the introduction. The mayor and council of Rockville is thankful to the Montgomery County delegation for the opportunity to share our 2022 state legislative priorities. Due to a conflict with our regular business meeting, Mayor Newton and the councilors regret that they are unable to be with you tonight. We ask for your support for the Rockville's 22 state legislative priorities, which are first, advocacy in support of state funding for capital and operating education needs. The prolonged nature of the pandemic, the return to the classroom education, and economic uncertainty have increased service pressures on education and child care providers. While ARPA may be helpful in the short term, sustainable state financial support is essential for the healthy development of our children. Second, we request advocacy in support of the full restoration of municipal highway user revenue. We request support to protect Rockville homes, businesses, and infrastructure in 9 city neighborhoods from being taken in the I-270 and I-495 managed lanes study. Rockville residents are greatly concerned about the project's physical and equity impacts on their communities, encroachment on their lands, effects on traffic, and the high tolls. Should the I-270 and I-495 managed lanes project go forward, we advocate for noise walls to be installed in all impacted neighborhoods to protect our residents from noise pollution. Next, we ask for advocacy in support of climate change policy initiatives, including but not limited to climate resiliency, floodplain planning and resilience, community choice aggregation, electric vehicle incentives, and renewable energy. We respectfully request support for increased funding for senior transportation services, recreation and wellness programming, living and outreach to increase awareness of senior programming in Rockville. Advocacy for legislation that would increase the fine for illegally modified exhaust systems that generate excessive noise and disrupt the quality of life for our neighborhoods. And then advocacy for enabling legislation that would authorize jurisdictions to post electronic legal notices. Rockville requests your support for legislative bond initiative in the amount of $250,000 for the F. Scott Fitzgerald Theater ADA improvements projects. We would like to update the lobby, the auditorium, backstage areas, gender neutral restrooms, and other areas of our venue. We also ask, please endorse the 2022 Maryland Municipal League and Rockville Priority, enabling legislation that would revise the state law relating to police accountability boards and administrative charging commissions to give municipalities the option of creating their own board and committee. The mayor and council look forward to partnering with you in Annapolis to advance Rockville's 2022 state legislative priorities. Thank you for your support to our cities and communities, supporting initiatives that will make Montgomery and Maryland a better place to be.
Thank you so much. We have a question from Delegate Barbe.
Thank you. I have a question for the county executive. A couple of months ago, the Environment and Transportation Committee had a 4.5-hour public hearing on the distribution of rental assistance money. And we discovered that there was a lot of unevenness in the effectiveness of that distribution. We discovered, for example, that Prince George's County was very effective, and that's great, in distributing rental assistance money in their county, but that Montgomery County was not as effective. And the reason for that was this. The United Way of Central Maryland has put together a very effective program where they work as the go-between for working with the county government and with the landlord and property owner community to make sure they very rapidly and very effectively target the renters who need assistance as quickly as possible. This program that the United Way has implemented has worked really well in several counties throughout the state of Maryland, but apparently Montgomery County has decided not to work with the United Way in this highly effective program. And I guess I have a question, and the question is, why did the Montgomery County government decide not to do that? And is this something, and the second part of that is this something that you would consider given how successful it has been in Prince George's County?
So Delegate Barbe, I think the County Executive Outreach had to get off, but County Executive Leggett is on the next panel, so maybe he'll give a go with that one.
Well, Ike's not the decision maker anymore.
So I think we can follow up with the County
Although
Executive.
he's not the decision maker, I wonder if County Council President Hucker would be able to enlighten us as to what the decision-making process was there.
I think he might have also had to drop off the call. Delegate Barbe, we started a little late.
Righty then, I guess I'll put my hand down and hope for an offline communication on the matter.
We also have former Delegate Knapp on the next panel, so perhaps he can give it a go also. I don't see any other questions, so with that, I will call up the next panel. I'm going to call you all up, and then please just proceed one after the other. Lizette Engel, former Councilman Knapp, Christine Gomes, County Executive Leggett, Anna Kademian, and Francisco Katenga Bracamonte. I'm sure I butchered that and I apologize, but please, starting with Lizette, just go one after the other. Each of you represent an organization and have 3 minutes each.
Thank you so much. My name is Lizette Orellana Engel, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Community Action Board in Montgomery County. Well, we'll talk about tonight's priorities, starting off with VITA and the Earned Income Tax Credit. Along with partners at the Cash Campaign of Maryland, we advocated for expansion of the state's EITC, and we're thrilled to see expansions enacted into law during the last session. Increasing the amount of the EITC for filers with or without dependents and expanding the EITC to include ITIN filers will have a significant impact on thousands of county households. This is especially important here in Montgomery County, where the county's Working Families Income Supplement continues to be 100% match of the state EITC and is now available to ITIN filers. The Voluntary Income Tax Credit Assistance Program is preparing for the tax season when lower income county households will receive free tax assistance and will be linked with all the credits for which they are eligible. We greatly appreciate the delegation's leadership and support on this issue. We ask that the increases to the Maryland EITC be sustained beyond tax year 2022, and we recommend exploring additional opportunities for expansion of the Maryland EITC, especially for single filers without dependents. Support for state-funded partners to help with outreach to ensure maximum utilization of the EITC is also important as they link our households to the EITC, which we know can uplift many families out of poverty. Next up is housing and utility expenses. Affordable housing remains a serious challenge in our community. In 2019, about half of all renters in the county were housing cost burdened, spending more than 30% of their income in housing alone. During the pandemic, the protections put in place, like the eviction prevention and caps on rent increases, help many in our county remain housed. We encourage the delegation to explore policies that will help lower income households pay their rent and programs that will help create more affordable housing options. As a governing body for Head Start, along with Head Start Parents Policy Council, early childhood education is an ongoing priority for the board. Child care costs in Montgomery County are the highest in the state. According to the self-sufficiency standard, a family of 4 with 2 adults, 1 infant, and 1 preschooler will spend over $2,700 a month in childcare costs alone. We ask the delegation to continue to explore programs and policies that will help families cover this cost, including childcare subsidies for families, childcare tax credits for employers, and child tax credits to provide additional financial support. We continue to monitor the rollout of the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. We're very excited by the prospects of additional pre-K spots for 3- and 4-year-olds, but at the same time, we're also concerned that the needs of family child care providers are not adequately addressed in this plan. We ask the delegation to advocate for a true mixed delivery system, one that ensures family child care providers have the same opportunity to offer pre-K services. Finally, we greatly appreciate the delegation's support for the 2-gen whole family approach, which aims to break down silos to provide services to children, parents, and caregivers. The whole family approach is a best practice and should remain a part of service delivery in Maryland. Joining our community action colleagues across the state, we're requesting continued funding for 2-gen efforts in Maryland. Thank you so much for your time.
Good evening. I'm Mike Knapp, currently serving as chair of the Montgomery College Board of Trustees, and it's always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you very much. Because of your support, modern classrooms and labs are under construction on one of the most diverse campuses in Maryland. Our campuses also need modern libraries. Help us renovate the Tacoma Park Silver Spring Resource Center. In addition to high-quality facilities, students also need improved access driven by inclusion and economics. Despite your good work, too many residents cannot easily get a timely and affordable degree, and too many jobs go vacant for a lack of talent. We all know the economic challenges. In Montgomery County, 3 out of every 4 jobs require a bachelor's degree. The Blueprint for Maryland requires 15,000 new teachers, and thousands of cybersecurity jobs go unfilled. Add this to the havoc the pandemic wreaked on families and our economy, including the healthcare workforce. In responding to the pandemic, you've done things you never thought possible to protect our state. Please continue this decisive leadership and advance 3 initiatives. First, the county executive and the county council, along with many of you, are right. MC should operate in the East County. Second, it's time to bring Common Course numbering to Maryland. We've discussed this for years. Florida and other states have done it. And too many community college students, Black and brown students, get caught in the endless debate about which course is worthy of transfer. As a result, we lose too much talent for no good reason. Finally, let's also end the debate about community college baccalaureate degrees in targeted disciplines like teaching, nursing, and technology. Florida, Washington, California, and 20 other states have already done this. Those states know such degrees increase the capacity to meet workforce demands and open the doors to greater economic opportunity for community college students. MC will collaborate with USG to best position our two institutions in such an effort here. But the pandemic laid bare the inequities too many residents face. Lack of access to affordable, high-quality post-secondary education is an inequity we have the power to solve, while fueling our economy with homegrown talent. Every Marylander, no matter their zip code or which educational path they choose, should reap the benefits of a knowledge-based economy. Again, you've done things that we never thought possible to protect our state. Please continue this decisive leadership. We have nothing to lose and everything to gain for Montgomery County and Maryland. Thank you very much.
Christine Gomes, please go ahead.
Good evening, members of the Montgomery County Delegation. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. My name is Christine Gomez, and I am a Montgomery College Student Senator at the Tacoma Park Silver Spring campus. After I earned my associate's degree, I plan to transfer to the University of Maryland College Park to major in immersive media design, a degree that combines coding with art. I'm a lifelong Montgomery County resident, and I live here in Silver Spring. I'm here tonight to say thank you. Students are so grateful for your past support to help keep MC tuition affordable. Also, thank you so much for supporting the Leggett Math and Science building. I know students on campus can't wait for the building to open up. I'm also here to ask you to help continue to keep MC's tuition affordable, to provide funds to renovate the TPSS campus library, and to help make transfer seamless and easy for students. Affordable tuition is important. As a student senator myself, I represent students who could not attend college without affordable tuition. Students who are mothers that run from class so they can get their kids at the bus stop. Students who come back to school so they can earn a degree so they can get a better job. Students like me who came straight from high school because it was the only affordable option. Affordable tuition lets people in our community earn a degree so they and their families can have a better life. Please support state aid to help keep MC's tuition affordable. Seamless transfer is critical to help more students earn a bachelor's degree. It's about affordability. I hope I can transfer without having to retake classes when I get to College Park. Please support legislation that helps students like me transfer easily so we can save both time and money. The library on the TPSS campus, now 61 years old, needs to be renovated. The library is the campus hub. It's where students study before they head to their job. It's where we meet with classmates to work on group projects before we go to our homes that are filled with families and responsibilities. The library is where students access computers with reliable internet. A renovated library will give students more places to study alone and in groups, more access to computers, an elevator that students with disabilities can use. Please support funding to renovate the TPSS campus library. Thank you so much for your past support, and please continue to support MC so that more students like me can pursue a college degree. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to participate this evening in this hearing. Let me acknowledge and thank you for your many years of work and support on behalf of Montgomery County and for our great state. Currently, I'm engaged in a number of educational endeavors. As a member of the Board of Regents for the University of Maryland System, recently named as the chair of the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, the board, the Implementation and Accountability Board. But I come to you this evening in my role as a member of the Boards of Advisors for the University of Shady Grove. We have an asset here in Montgomery County, one that I am somewhat convinced needs to be improved in order for us to get through the next 20 years. Go back just a moment in history. Many years ago, over 20 years ago, we started with the idea of having a four-year institution in Montgomery County. Unfortunately, we ended up with a different format than originally intended, the University of Shady Grove. I had my doubts and suspicions about whether or not it would be successful. It has been successful. As I indicated earlier, we have over 13,000 graduates who've come through that system. Unfortunately, there's a great deal of work ahead. We are literally fighting beneath our weight class. We need to ensure for the future that we have predictable, sustainable funding sources in order for us to meet the needs of tomorrow. Think about it. Montgomery County is a county with well over 1.1 million residents. We have large employment sectors throughout the entire county. We set the hub of bioscience technology in Montgomery County. We can leverage those assets in a better way. In order to do so, we need to ensure that our future at the University of Shady Grove is better positioned for that task. I urge you, one, to help us to secure those funding sources, two, to increase the great advocacy that you've engaged in over the years. Those two things alone, I think with the committed leadership that we have in place, with the commitment for the future, we will ensure that we are in a better place for University of Shady Grove. I believe in the University of Shady Grove. You've helped us in the past, and I know that we can do a great job going forward. Thank you very much.
Members of the delegation, thank you for your leadership, your ongoing support, and for the opportunity to address you tonight. I'm Ann Kademian, Executive Director of the Universities at Shady Grove, and I couldn't agree more with Professor Ike Leggett. I'm so appreciative for his commitment to USG and for serving as my co-chair on our strategic plan. I'm grateful that we have such an engaged delegation when it comes to supporting USG's mission to serve what I call the future student, the non-traditional student who represents almost 3/4 of all students in higher education in this country. They come from diverse backgrounds. They are first in their families to go to college. They work while going to school. They have families or children and take care of. We must meet the needs of these students if we, as a country, intend to remain viable and successful. For decades, higher ed's main recipe for success has been built around serving college students who come to campus for 4 years, live in a dorm, and seek to earn their degrees in a residential campus environment. But the student of the future needs higher education that truly meets them where they are in life, one that is centered more on the skills that they will need for the workforce following graduation. And short-term workforce knowledge won't be enough. The reality is that there are evolving circumstances, like COVID, that will require them to be lifelong learners long after their first 4 years of higher education. That's exactly why USG was founded as a 21st century higher education solution that works specifically to support the unique needs and expectations of both non-traditional students and the local workforce. By working in lockstep with our 9 university partners, with MCPS, with Montgomery College, with other area community colleges, and with our neighbors from IBBR, the Institute for Bioscience and Biotechnology Research, we can become a nimble and dynamic hub for education that meets students where they are and can help to propel and transform our local economy. That's why we are working closely right now with the University System of Maryland to develop a long-term funding plan for USG that will enable us to serve the students of the future and the employers who are poised to hire them. The ROI for investing in Shady Grove students will be enormous. I ask that you go to bat for USG as the vital connection between the Montgomery County educational system and the current and future workforce needs of our region. It is imperative that we as a county be a champion for educational change and lead in delivering on the equity promise for all students. Thank you.
Members of the county delegation, my name is Francisco Cartagena. I am a proud graduate student at USG, completing a master's in cybersecurity from UMBC, working full-time for the city of Gaithersburg and serving on the USG Board of Advisors. I also completed my undergraduate degree at USG after attending Montgomery College. Montgomery County is where my family migrated from El Salvador years ago. It's where, as an MCPS student, I found emotional support working with a local nonprofit. It's where I married and when I work. The USG campus is not just the best place for me to reach my academic goals. It was the only place. Like so many of my peers, by the time I was thinking about my undergraduate degree, I was already deeply rooted in my community, and for personal and financial reasons, I could not leave. That's why I'm speaking to you today. I need you to know why USG is the pride of Montgomery County and our exemplary state. And I ask that you redouble your efforts to invest in the USG model, a model that can work for thousands more students like me. As a former undocumented student, I can attest of how challenging it can be to want to be able to attend college in your state, not be able to afford it. It's heartbreaking. And as a documented student, I can attest to how expensive and intimidating private and federal loans are. It truly is scary. As a USG student, however, I can attest to how comforting it is to attend an accessible and affordable campus that looks out for the student's best interest. As a USG student, I've been presented with ample opportunities to grow professionally at the same time as I've been able to advance through my academic journey. Students like me are working adults at the same time as we are students. I could not drive to UMBC. I needed to attend an institution that allowed me to better my circumstances all along the way. USG led me to the opportunity to enter for Congressman Jamie Raskin and eventually to land a full-time job at the city of Gaithersburg as a human resources technician, and now as an IT project manager, where I'll be able to use my cybersecurity degree. In short, I'm asking you to keep on investing in USG. USG is a beacon of academic hope for so many. In supporting USG, you're helping students to achieve their academic goals at the same time as ensuring their career competitiveness. Please keep doing it. Just last Friday, there was a hackathon there. Students were able to win $5,000. This is in our backyard. You cannot give up on this campus. Please do so. Some of you have interviewed me for a job. You know what I'm talking about. It's a great investment. Thank you so much for your time.
Mr. Cartagena, thank you so very much for that great story and for sharing that with us. Very much appreciated. And before County Executive Leggett signs off, I just want to say thank you very much to County Executive Leggett for his incredible legacy of public service here in Montgomery County. We are all the better for it, so thank you. And I see a hand from Senator Kagan. So please, Senator Kagan, what you got?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Senator Kramer. Thank you, Dr. Kademian and Ms. Gomez and Mr. Cartagena. Great to have you all here. I feel like once a year, the one thing that I do is make sure to talk publicly about legislative scholarships. Costs for USG and Montgomery College is critically challenging for many families, and a lot of the delegation do give out senatorial and delegate scholarships. So be in touch with your own legislators. Check what district you live in, mdelect.net. I can tell you that my deadline for spring semester is coming up in 2 weeks, I think, a week and a half. So, and I suspect that many others on this call do the same. So check it out, be in touch, and we give out tens of thousands of dollars. Let us help you with your educational career. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised, so we will move on to the next panel. And on the list, I have Brian Levine, my partner in getting into crime and mischief from AFSCME Council 3, Lance Kilpatrick, Pia Morrison, Christopher Dews, Melissa Bondi, Chris Perry. I don't know whether Nicole Hansen Mundell is with us, but you're on this panel. And finally, wrapping up this panel, I have Karen Lundergan. So with that, Brian Levine, you are up.
Thank you, Chair Kramer and Chair Corman and members of the delegation. Good evening. I am Brian Levine with the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce. Let me begin by thanking the entire delegation for your ongoing advocacy throughout this pandemic on behalf of the business community. The Chamber has been working diligently to ensure that businesses, especially those that are small and disadvantaged or veteran-owned, have been able to weather these difficult times. So we ask the delegation to continue to support policies that help small businesses get through the economic shocks that we've seen in this pandemic. For my testimony tonight, I wanted to touch on some policy issues that benefit small businesses in Montgomery County. First is transportation. So we are very pleased to see President Biden sign his infrastructure legislation today. Locally, we ask for your support of multimodal transportation improvements, including completing the Purple Line and easing traffic congestion on 270 and 495 and repairing the American Legion Bridge. Here at the Chamber, we contend that these projects will deliver economic benefits, including lower commute times and a more efficient movement of commerce throughout the region. Another area of importance is making Maryland a better place to do business. We are hearing from Chamber members that are facing a host of pandemic-related challenges like higher unemployment insurance taxes. We're also hearing about challenges doing business with state government. As an example, a member who is a small disadvantaged business reached out to us recently and wanted help understanding why it took his company over 100 days to process certain business app certifications with state government. And while we fully understand that the challenges of the current environment that makes it difficult to process applications and perform due diligence, our member company reports that the process takes significantly less time in other states. So we believe that it is important for state government to maintain a customer-oriented approach for businesses to keep our state competitive. Another priority is broadband infrastructure. The Chamber is very appreciative of the support we've seen from the delegation on this issue. Improving broadband closes the digital divide and addresses vital equity issues. These technologies also give our local businesses in our state a competitive edge to grow and increase their ability to succeed. Finally, the Chamber appreciates your support on another vital priority, and that's childcare. The Chamber was an advocate for addressing childcare challenges before the pandemic, but this issue has emerged as one of even greater importance since the pandemic has begun. Quality and affordable childcare is paramount, and more options are needed, not only for children to get a head start, but also to help employers that are struggling with ever-growing workforce challenges. Providing parents of small children a more affordable option to help them choose whether they enter or re-enter the workforce will improve Montgomery's business climate. Thank you, Chair Kramer and Chair Corman and the Montgomery delegation for giving us this opportunity to testify tonight, and we look forward to working with you during the upcoming session.
Brian, don't ever hesitate to reach out to us if you find that a business in Montgomery County is not getting the attention it deserves at the state level. Governor Hogan has been claiming that Maryland is open for business. Maybe it's not quite as open as he's been claiming. So we're happy to step in and provide assistance if you find the administration is failing at some level. So please make sure that message gets out there. We all stand ready and willing to be of service. We'll hold questions until the end of this panel. So please stay with us. And everybody, please keep that in mind. If you're on a panel, stay with us to the end of the panel because there may be questions when we are finished. We are up for Mr. Lance Kilpatrick.
Thank you, Chair Kramer and Chair, excuse me, Chair Corman. For the record, my name is Lance Kilpatrick. I'm the Legislative and Political Director for AFSCME Council 3. We represent approximately 30,000 state and higher education employees across Maryland. And tonight, what I wanted to do is just touch on some of AFSCME's legislative priorities that are coming up for the coming session, starting with December. There is an incredibly important bill that the General Assembly passed and will look to override the governor's veto. This bill would consolidate collective bargaining for public higher education employees, allowing for one contract to cover them just like one contract covers state employees. It'll be a huge win for higher education employees. And I want to give a big shout out to Senator Kramer and Delegate Solomon for shepherding this through the legislature. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention that there's a smaller bill that's on the override agenda that was sponsored by Senator Zucker. And I want to thank him for that piece of legislation as well. It has to do with new employee orientation. Now, let's talk about collective bargaining. Back in December of 2017, AFSCME and the Hogan administration had reached an impasse in bargaining over new economic terms. A fact finder was brought in and essentially found for the union on a number of different issues. The Hogan administration responded by doing nothing because they could, because there is nothing in Maryland law that compels the resolution of a collective bargaining session. We need a process that brings resolution. We need a process where we can put our best proposal forward and have management put their best proposal forward, and then a neutral arbiter will determine what that result would be. That process is binding arbitration. And I want to thank Senator Kramer and Delegate Corman for agreeing to lead this effort in the upcoming legislative session. And not all state employees have collective bargaining rights or even merit rights. Take, for example, the Office of Public Defender. There are roughly 425 assistant public defenders in Maryland, all of whom are categorized as at-will special appointees. This means that they can be terminated at any time for no reason in regard for their job performance. When the Office of Public Defender was first established in the 1970s, it was staffed with contractual part-time attorneys. But now we have full-time permanent employees. Similarly situated state employees with professional licenses and advanced degrees fall under the professional service category, and assistant public defenders should too. This legislation would grant merit status to the social workers and administrative staff within the Office of Public Defender, as well as granting those assistant lawyers and everybody collective bargaining rights going forward, just like the state workforce siblings that they have those rights as well. Two other pieces of legislation I want to mention briefly. There would be a minimum expectation for an employer to at least try to prevent injuries and illness prevention if there was a health and safety planning system in place in Maryland. Presently, there is no injury and illness prevention programs within Maryland under statute. Senator Feldman was kind enough to introduce that legislation last session for us. It's something that Maryland is actually behind, not just places like California, but places like Louisiana, when it comes to ensuring health and safety for workers in both the public and private sector. We're hoping we can push that forward again this year. Doing those things and setting up labor management, public safety meetings to actually identify things before they happen are important. And finally, COVID-19 sadly has not left us, right? We unfortunately had to pass legislation last year that provided line of duty death benefits for those who contracted COVID and died. We need disability benefits going forward as well. I know this is a nascent issue that we're still learning a lot about, but it's something that we really need to look at going forward. I'll be testifying Thursday before the Joint Committee on Pensions about this issue as well. That's it. Thank you so much for your time. It's great to see so many friends here. I look forward to seeing you in person in January. Very exciting.
Lance, thank you, my friend. And let's move on, please, to Pia Morrison.
Good evening. My name is Pia Morrison, president of SEIU Local 500, which represents thousands of educators in Montgomery County and across Maryland, the District of Columbia, and Northern Virginia. I would like to thank you all for the incredible support you've shown our state's community college faculty and staff by passing the Maryland Community College Employees Freedom to Collectively Bargain Act of 2021. You have all but guaranteed that tens of thousands of Marylanders will finally have the same right to collectively bargain as countless other employees in our state. As we all know, collective bargaining is key to working people having their needs and concerns heard by their employers. For nearly a decade, community college employees across our state have been fighting for this basic right, and it was you in the last session who voted to make their aspirations a reality. In the coming special session, it is imperative that the General Assembly override the governor's ill-advised veto of the Maryland Community College Employees Freedom to Collectively Bargain Act. If nothing else, the governor's public statement on the veto demonstrates a lack of understanding of the very real challenges facing Maryland Community College employees. Once again, I thank you for taking the initiative and vowing to override this needless veto. Come the regular session in January, we will of course be prioritizing paid family leave with the Time to Care Act. Millions of Americans currently lack paid leave to care for their own family members. With Congress unable to take decisive action on this matter, and with few other jurisdictions extending paid family leave to their residents, we have a chance to make Maryland a national leader. By passing time to care, we can make Maryland a champion for working families and small businesses and an example for the nation that proves there is no need for anyone to be forced to choose between their income and their family. I know I speak for all of our 20,000 members when I say we look forward to doing amazing things with you all in the special session, the regular session, and beyond. We're only just beginning our great work together. Thank you so much for your kind consideration.
President Morrison, thank you for joining us this evening, and I am confident that the Montgomery County delegation is going to show up at that special session prepared to deal with the ill-conceived veto of that important community college bargaining rights legislation. So thank you for speaking with us this evening. And now, Christopher Dews, you're up.
Thank you, Senator. My name is Christopher Dews. I'm a policy advocate for the Job Opportunities Task Force, as well as the chair of the People's Commission to Decriminalize Poverty in Maryland. All we want the delegation to focus on this legislative session is access to jobs through the elimination of barriers to employment. We have hundreds of thousands of job openings, as everybody has seen, throughout the state, throughout the county, and we want to get people to work, but there are still many barriers that need to be alleviated to get them there. I'm just going to name three. Number one is skills training. What we would like to see is level or enhanced funding for the EARN grant, as well as SNAP ENT, as both provide necessary funding into workforce development providers that train residents for in-demand jobs, which are vital for today's economy. Second, we would love to see you all support the Give Me a Chance Act. This bill prohibits hiring discrimination on the basis of a college degree for the 40% of Montgomery Countyers and the 63% of Maryland's workforce that do not currently have a college degree. Harvard Business School noted that 80% of the new jobs or more that were created from 2007 to 2016 required a bachelor's degree, despite the current occupants of those positions not having a degree at all. 80% of Latinx workers, 70% of Black workers, and 70% of rural workers are entirely screened out of employment due to the lack of a college degree, despite the fact that many have been trained through the military, apprenticeships, community colleges, or just old-fashioned experience. So we hope that you will support the elimination of credential discrimination all throughout the state. And lastly, we want to talk about transportation. Doesn't matter if you get a person a job if you cannot get them there. Almost half of Marylanders drive to a different county for their place of employment, which means you're going to get a car, affordable auto insurance, and a valid driver's license. But we have 500,000 Marylanders who drive uninsured because they cannot afford it, because of the use of credit history and zip code in the underwriting processes, as well as 27,000 Marylanders from 2015 to 2020 who had their licenses suspended because they could not afford to pay their child support. At JOTF, we do not believe that your poverty should determine your access to mobility. So we are hoping that you will consider the legislation that we are pushing, which will, one, repeal the use of credit history and auto insurance, remove license suspensions for the lowest income earners in the state of Maryland, and also the elimination of incarceration as a penalty for driving on a suspended license for child support and for driving uninsured, because we don't want anybody getting locked up for these reasons. We hope that you guys will consider all of these different bills that we are pushing so we can get our Marylanders back to work. I thank you so much for listening and open for any questions.
Mr. Dews, thank you, sir. We're moving on to Melissa Bondi, please.
Good evening, Senator Kramer and members of the delegation. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. My name is Melissa Bondi, and I'm speaking on behalf of Enterprise Community Partners. Enterprise is a national nonprofit headquartered in Columbia, Maryland. We have offices in the DC metro area and Baltimore as well. Over more than 35 years, we have invested more than $160 million in Montgomery County and $828 million statewide in both low and moderate income housing communities. We're also an original signer of the 2017 Purple Line Community Development Agreement and a member of the Purple Line Corridor Coalition. As you know, the PLCC is comprised of cross-sector organizations working actively to support and grow local businesses, to build a thriving labor market, to ensure housing choices for all, and to celebrate vibrant, sustainable communities along the corridor. Tonight, we are pleased to share with you our 2022 priorities for state level legislation and funding that will leverage and amplify existing and future local and private sector priorities and investments along the corridor. I'll begin with housing. Nearly 70% of the 170,000 individuals who live within the Purple Line corridor today are persons of color, and nearly half of all households earn less than $70,000 a year. Without concerted intervention to produce and preserve housing affordability and prevent displacement, we know that too many current and future Purple Line neighbors will face higher cost burdens and housing instability. Our housing priorities include ongoing COVID response and increased support for vulnerable residents and landlords to keep the housing market afloat and moving. We support expanded low-income tenant and homeowner protections to ensure their housing stability and good health outcomes until the pandemic is finished. We support additional support for proven effective state housing and community development financing capital and program resources for the construction, preservation, and rehabilitation of projects near transit stations like the Purple Line. Small businesses, many of whom are family-owned, are also under threat by interruptions due to the pandemic, the ongoing transit construction period, and escalating rents and redevelopment pressures we know are coming. Our most urgent small business priorities include restorations of the programs you approved in 2021 for small business grants along the Purple Line, such as Construction Zone and Marketing Act resources for the Purple Line and other resources. We also support increased funding to support the Maryland Main Streets program to include more Purple Line corridor communities and legacy business protection policies, perhaps tax abatements, grants, or tax credits to help support longstanding anchors of communities to remain in place. Our workforce today and in the future will also need resources and education to ensure they are well trained, can grow in number, and are well matched with employers in skills and location. We also support the EARN competitive partnership workforce development grant programs, integrated education and training models, digital literacy training, apprenticeships, and faculty recruitment in licensed trades. I want to thank you for the opportunity to share our views and for your support of the Purple Line corridor and priorities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bondi. We now have Chris Perry. Chris? Do we have Chris Perry with us? Rebecca, do you see Chris Perry with us?
He is in the meeting, but I don't see him unmuting.
Maybe Chris Perry has stepped away from the Zoom momentarily, so I will bounce back to Chris Perry. Let's move on to Nicole Hansen Mundell, and we weren't sure whether she was with us. Rebecca, do you see her?
No, she is not on.
All right, and we thought she might not be there. So why don't we move on to Karen Lundergan? Why don't you take the opportunity to jump in, and then we'll come back to Chris Perry one more time.
Thank you, Senator Kramer. I want to say good evening, Senator Kramer, Chair Corman, and Montgomery County delegation. My name is Karen Lundergan. I don't have a prepared speech tonight. A little nervous, but I am a former resident of the Housing Opportunities Commission in Montgomery County, and I'm here to request that there's even more transparency over the Housing Opportunities Commission. There were a couple bills that were introduced and passed thanks to Senator Kramer, Delegate Shetty, and Delegate Carr. There's a couple other bills I'd like to see be reintroduced. There was one bill about the county executive having more oversight in it, being able to appoint the HOC commission chair, and another bill that didn't pass, that was 120, and then Bill 520 having just more transparency over the spending at the Housing Opportunities Commission. I think there's some commissioners there that are they've been there quite a long time. There's no term limits. Some of them are in their 80s, and honestly, I just think they're kind of ineffective. As a former resident, I think it's really important that the Housing Opportunities Commission is much more transparent, and especially since they serve so many, affordable housing is so crucial to low-income residents in Montgomery County. Honestly, you guys, I've had numerous issues with a lot of illegalities with the Housing Opportunities Commissions. There was issues about them not being a county government agency, and they've been using the office of the county attorney. And this has to do with an old insurance agreement back from 1987. It has to do with commercial insurance loss. And I just really would like to urge us to maybe, as a possibility of putting this back on the table. I know you guys have a busy year in 2022, but I really would appreciate even more transparency over the Housing Opportunities Commission. It's a big start because there were bills that were passed, but I really, as a former resident, I like to see even more happening with them. And I won't go into all the details, but I've been through a lot myself with numerous illegalities happening, and many other residents have as well. They're scared to come forward and speak. And we have a right to have a voice and be heard. So I wanted to speak as to this. So anyway, I just wanted to say thank you.
Ms. Lundrigan, thank you very much. Appreciate your insights with regard to the HOC. We'll go back one more time to Chris Perry. Chris Perry, going once, going twice. All right, Chair Corman, you're going to pick up questions for this panel, I believe.
Thank you, Delegate Shi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for all the comments. I just wanted to remind my colleagues that if you are interested in small business issues, the Montgomery County House Delegation's Economic Development Committee is going to host a briefing for all of our colleagues. So please join us at 10 o'clock by Zoom. We will be hearing how the state's grants worked in Montgomery County in helping small businesses and how they recovered since a year and a half ago, and how we can help them. What are the critical issues? So please join us if you can, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Thanks.
We might still be on the call at that time, Delegate Shi, so you may have to reschedule. The next panel, and I'll just read your names and then please begin and just go one after the other, is Guy Andes from WSSC, Carol Stern, Jews United for Justice, Leslie Milano from the Montgomery County Women's Democratic Club, Michael DeLong from the Montgomery County Young Democrats, Emil Parker, Tacoma Park Mobilization, Jeremy Lemaster, Free State Justice, and Rebecca Hertzman, Critical Issues Forum. So we'll start with Guy Andes, and each of you represents an organization. So each have 2 minutes, and please continue on through, and we'll do questions at the end. Guy?
Good evening, Chairman Corman, Chairman Kramer, members of the delegation. For the record, I'm Guy Andes, Government Affairs Manager for WSSC Water. As you all are well aware, the health pandemic has caused an enormous impact on families, businesses, and organizations across the state and Montgomery County. At the onset of the health emergency in March 2020, WSSC made this decision to suspend all late fees and service shutoffs. A few days later, the governor signed the executive order prohibiting utilities from charging late fees and shutoffs to the customers, and that order expired in September of 2020. And the subsequent PSC order prohibiting utility shutoffs expired 1 year ago today. Knowing how vital water was to combat the spread of the COVID-19 virus, WSSC maintained its declared emergency and continued to suspend late fees and service shutoffs, which we recently began reassessing late fees in July of 2021 and service shutoffs in September of this year. Today, nearly 1 in 5 of our 475,000 customers are delinquent on their water bills and subject to turnoff. These accounts have balances totaling $68.3 million. To put this in perspective, prior to the pandemic, these numbers were roughly a third and a half of what they are today. Customers who are behind on their bills can seek assistance through payment plans and other through our customer affordability program and through the water fund. As of the end of October, we have nearly 16,000 customers enrolled in our CAP program, where they receive credits for their fixed charges on their account and a waiver on the state Bay restoration fee for an average of about $172 in assistance a year. The water fund has provided assistance of nearly $775,000 to 1,720 families since the beginning of the pandemic. The CAP program is funded by our ratepayers, and the water fund is funded by our customers through the Roundup program on their bill and charitable donations. WSSC does not receive any state or county appropriations for these funds. Unlike the gas and electric companies, WSSC nor our customers did not receive any of the $81 million set aside for utility assistance in the relief bill that was passed by the General Assembly earlier this year. WSSC has not received any CARES or ARPA funds that were allocated to the state, county, or municipalities either. For these reasons and the ever-present need of our customers, your constituents, we're requesting your support for a state appropriation for our assistance programs and the establishment of a state-funded water bill assistance fund. We believe part of the $2.5 billion surplus is a good source to fund both of these requests. I thank you for your time and look forward to working with you during session to address this matter and the 3 pre-filed WSSC local bills that have been introduced. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Guy. Carol, please go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Carol Stern. I live in Chevy Chase, and I'm the co-chair of Jews United for Justice, Maryland Justice System Reform and Immigrant Rights Team. JUFJ organizes 6,000 Jewish Marylanders and allies to work for social, racial, and economic justice at the state and local level. We just marked the beginning of Kislev, the Hebrew month of Hanukkah. During Hanukkah, we remember how our ancestors fought against an unjust society that privileged the powerful few over the needs of the community. Today, we have taken important steps to move Maryland forward, but too often we see reflections of the inequities that faced our ancestors. One such inequity is the lack of paid family and medical leave, which means most people can't afford to take time off to care for themselves or their loved one. The Time to Care Act is supported by more than 86% of Marylanders. This is the year to pass paid family and medical leave in Maryland. Last year, you supported access to counsel for renters facing eviction, and now we need your support to fund that program. To ensure rental assistance actually keeps people housed, we and our partners at Renters United Maryland urge you to require landlords apply for emergency rental assistance before filing for eviction and require judges to stay evictions when there is a pending application for rental assistance. We appreciate that you voted for the Driver's Privacy Act and Dignity Not Detention, and now we need your vote to override the governor's vetoes. We are joining CASA in supporting universal representation for Maryland immigrants who are detained. No one should be ripped away from their families because they lack legal counsel. Police violence and abuse continues to ravage Black and Brown communities, and we thank you and the role of the delegation that you played in passing historic reforms in the last year. As a part of implementing those reforms, the role of Baltimore City Civilian Review Board needs to be clarified. Together with our partners in the Maryland Coalition for Justice and Police Accountability, we are supporting Counselors Not Cops legislation to prioritize school-based mental health services and restorative justice over armed police officers in schools. Maryland has the highest rate of incarcerated Black residents in the nation, and we appreciate the steps you've taken to address the inequity by taking the governor out of the parole review process and creating a women's pre-release facility. We now need your support to override the governor's veto of parole reform, provide funding for the pre-release facility, and pass the Juvenile Interrogation Protection Act to ensure kids are not questioned by police without a lawyer.
Great, Carol. Carol, thank you so much. That was
Thank
3
you.
minutes. I appreciate your testimony. Leslie Milano, please go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Leslie Milano. I'm the president of the Montgomery County's Women's Democratic Club. WDC is one of the largest and most active Democratic clubs in the county, with hundreds of politically active women and men, including many elected officials, including many of you. So thank you. WDC thanks all of you for your public service. We see your hard work, and we look forward to working with you on important issues. We're pleased to formally present these advocacy priorities for the 2022 Maryland State Legislative Session. We are most concerned with legislation that prioritizes women and families. We are also most concerned with addressing issues that stem from poverty, systemic racism, and other issues that make women and families vulnerable and marginalized. We need affordable housing in Montgomery County, including just cause convictions and affordable living options for residents with fixed incomes and income insecurity, with urgent protections for situations resulting from the pandemic. With regard to criminal justice and public safety, we will advocate for juvenile justice reform, including not trying young people as adults, eliminating spousal immunity for rape and sexual assault, not criminalizing civil obligations that create debtor prisons, and eliminating the school to prison pipeline. With regard to education, WDC supports funding the Blueprint for Maryland for all our children, closing the opportunity gap and creating a school environment that promotes health and wellness, especially the prioritization of mental health. With regard to the environment, our top issues are the responsible disposal of toxic synthetic turf products, reduction of greenhouse gases, and improved water quality. For health care, we support programs that provide affordable, accessible healthcare to all, including reliable telehealth options. For our aging population, both working and retired seniors need economic security, healthy aging programs, compassionate elder care, and protections from fraud and abuse. With regard to immigration, we support bills addressing issues that disproportionately impact the economic security and education, healthcare, and public safety of immigrant women and children. And finally, with regard to working families and their economic security, one of our top priorities is the passage of the Time to Care Act. We also will support legislation to reduce the pay gap, support essential workers, alleviate the impact of the COVID pandemic on women and their families, address the child care crisis, and ensure no one with a full-time job is living in poverty. Also, one of our issues, not a core issue, but still there, is ranked choice voting, which has been shown to increase opportunities for women, especially women of color, in holding local office. Our formal priorities report has been distributed to the delegation. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks again. We appreciate all that you're doing and hope you have a great night.
Thank you. Michael, please go ahead.
Good evening, members of the delegation. Thanks for receiving our testimony. I'm Michael DeLong, president of the Montgomery County Young Democrats, an organization of young Democrats ages 14 to 34, working to ensure freedom and opportunity for all and to get young people involved in politics. These are extraordinary times, and we urge you during the upcoming legislative session to champion major reforms and show that government can meaningfully improve Marylanders' lives. We thank you for your work to combat police brutality and pursue policing reform earlier this year, but the fight is far from over. Currently, police officers have qualified immunity, which means they are protected from civil lawsuits, can even collect their pensions if they lose their jobs for abuse or misconduct. We urge you to end qualified immunity, end this get out of jail free card for abusive officers, and build on the historic policing reforms that you passed last session. And the eviction moratorium is over. Eviction filings are rising, and a lot of renters are struggling to stay in their homes. Tenants need to be protected from unjust treatment, not just in Montgomery County, but across the state. Delegate Wilkins has the Stable Home Act, which prohibits landlords from evicting tenants without just cause, like breaking their lease, damaging the property, or other things. We strongly support this bill and urge you to pass it and grant protections to all Maryland renters. Paid family leave should be another top priority. The COVID-19 pandemic isn't over yet. Workers, employers, and the general public benefit when people have paid time off to care for themselves and their loved ones. The Time to Care Act has been introduced in the past couple of sessions. We strongly support it. We hope you will bring it back and that this year it will get through. It means not having to choose between paychecks and families, leads to a stronger economy, more workplace equality, and actually strengthens family values. We also urge you to tackle the problem of student loan debt, which looms over way too many people's lives, especially our members, and any reforms you can do to alleviate the burden or reduce it would be immensely helpful. Finally, we can't remain indifferent to the environment and to the effects of climate change, which are already impacting Maryland. Examples include increased flooding in Annapolis, where you'll be meeting in a few months, and the erosion of various islands in the Chesapeake Bay. We urge you to pass environmental protection, reduce carbon emissions, and oppose Hogan's highway expansion plan, which will result in increased pollution and traffic. And finally, we encourage you to consider allowing ranked choice voting for Montgomery County elections. Thank you very much.
Emil Parker, please go ahead.
Good evening, delegation members. My name is Emil Parker. I'm here on behalf of Tacoma Park Mobilization to present our priorities for the 2022 sessions of the General Assembly. Tacoma Park Mobilization works in coalition with other organizations to, among other things, help make meaningful improvements to our criminal justice and immigration systems. We urge you to, number one, support the veto overrides for Dignity Not Detention and the Driver Privacy Act. Two, support the Universal Representation Bill, which will guarantee access to counsel and immigration proceedings for detained Maryland residents. And three, support legislation to expand access to health care for all Maryland residents, regardless of immigration status. We must override Governor Hogan's vetoes to ensure that the hard work we all did last year to protect immigrants in Maryland is realized. We cannot be complicit in the unjust and inhumane immigration detention system, and we must ensure that our immigrant neighbors can seek assistance from law enforcement or get a driver's license, which makes the road safer for everyone without risking deportation. Access to counsel for immigrants from Maryland who are detained by ICE anywhere is essential to keeping our immigrant families intact and avoiding the social, economic, and public health costs of deportation. In addition, as members of the Silver Spring Justice Coalition and the Maryland Coalition for Justice and Police Accountability, we support their policing-related legislative priorities for this session. In particular, we urge you to build on the policing reform legislation enacted last session by passing, number one, a bill that requires all on-duty officers to wear body-worn cameras when they're in public, and requires off-duty officers to wear body-worn cameras when they are in public and carrying their service weapon. And number two, legislation allowing the county to move automated traffic enforcement from MCPD to the Montgomery County Department of Transportation. As demonstrated most recently by a comprehensive investigation in the New York Times, police officers make unnecessary traffic stops, feel threatened when they aren't, and as a result, kill hundreds of unarmed drivers and passengers. We need to take this modest step to reduce the risk of such killings in Montgomery County. Finally, we ask you to support one, cannabis legislation that ensures equitable access to the economic benefits of legalization and repairs the years and years of harm caused to Black and Brown communities as a result of marijuana prosecutions through both economic support and expungement of prior convictions. And two, juvenile justice reform that treats children as children, keeps them out of adult jails, and ensures they have counsel present before being interrogated by the police. Thank you very much for all the work that you've done and for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Jeremy, please go ahead.
Was that me? I apologize.
That's you, Jeremy. Please go ahead.
Great. Thank you so much. Good evening, delegation members, and thank you so much for the opportunity to have Free State here today to share with you some emerging issues impacting lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer Marylanders, as well as some of our priorities for this coming session. My name is Jeremy Lemaster. My pronouns are he and they. I'm a Baltimore resident, and I serve as the Executive Director for Free State Justice, a 30-year-old statewide organization formerly known as Free State Legal Project and Equality Maryland. Today, we provide direct client legal services and policy advocacy for low-income LGBTQ Marylanders. This session, we really are looking to ensure that all publicly funded services are accessible, equitable, and affirming. Broadly, we aim to address discrimination in our schools, in our human services, as well as in our justice system, especially for those that are most marginalized within our community, including people of color, trans folks, youth, and older adults. Despite the Fairness for All Marylanders Act in 2014, the legislation then included significant gaps that have only widened and deepened today. 1 in 3 LGBTQ plus Marylanders report experiencing discrimination on the basis of sexual identity or gender identity, and that's even more pronounced in folks that are women who are people of color or who are youth. As a reminder, LGBTQ plus folks are disproportionately represented and are impacted by poverty and access to healthcare and access to mental health services when it comes to substance abuse, homelessness, criminalization, and incarceration. That's why it's important for us to establish that at the minimum, all of our taxpayer-funded government services in the state of Maryland are non-discriminatory in nature and are accessible for all. And those that are providing these services are trained and equipped to be affirming in their interactions with our community. Most importantly, I really do want to center the Inclusive Schools Act. We are in year 5 now in attempting to foster safer schools across the state of Maryland. I really do honor the work that Montgomery County Schools has done in creating non-discrimination policies in their schools, but the work needs to be expanded out to the entire state. Last year, nationally, we saw a concerted attack on trans youth, with many states stripping them of their rights and ostracizing them from their communities. Maryland is one of the states that does not have non-discrimination protections for our schools across the state. The Inclusive Schools Act would establish a written non-discrimination policy in every student manual of every publicly funded school in the state, with a clear process for remediation. These policies have been the most significant factor in reducing harassment and bullying, in reducing absenteeism, in improving grades and improving mental health, not just of LGBTQ+ students, but of all students and the schools that they're in. So if you believe in safer schools, if you believe in high-performing schools, and if you care about poor students as well and their access to education, then you should also care about the Inclusive School Act. We look forward to talking more. Thank you. With delegation this year.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Rebecca Hertzman.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Hertzman, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Critical Issues Forum, comprised of members from Temples Beth Ami, Kol Shalom, and Adat Shalom. CIF has been advocating for solutions to food insecurity in Maryland for the past 6 years. Recently, our agenda also includes issues of gun violence. We thank the members of the Montgomery County delegation for their support of these issues, which our written testimony elaborates. First issue to talk about, food insecurity on college campuses. Currently, many college students in Maryland are older, part-time, or have limited financial resources. They come to campus hungry, but do not have access to SNAP benefits due to the structure of previous bills. There is strong evidence that a disproportionate number of these students never complete college, losing the opportunity for a better future. We are grateful to Delegate Solomon for supporting and addressing these issues. Second issue, younger children living in foster care are eligible for free meals. However, there are many children who live with grandparents or other caretakers with limited incomes, but are not eligible for free school meals without an application submitted by their caretakers. A small investment would go a long way to help these families. Third, the Restaurant Meals Program allows SNAP recipients who are elderly, disabled, or homeless to purchase restaurant meals, but right now they are not allowed to purchase prepared foods at groceries. We are currently looking into Maryland regulations because we believe there may be an interpretation issue which would solve this problem. However, a legislative fix may be necessary. Fourth, we support the bill that Delegate Charkoudian is working on, which will increase funding in the farm to food security area. This would increase state funding for Maryland market money and allow eligible people to purchase more locally grown food from farmers markets, as well as allowing food banks to purchase more food from local farms. With respect to the issues of gun violence protection, first, ghost guns, which allow firearms to be assembled from untraceable sources, are an increasing threat to our communities and a major problem for law enforcement. Despite new regulations that address this issue, we need a Maryland law to enforce this and to regulate the tens of thousands of ghost guns already in private hands. Second, we need to strengthen our laws for child access prevention and safe storage of guns. Too many children are dying unnecessarily due to gun accidents or to suicide. Third, we support efforts to ensure that all gun dealers are properly securing their inventory and maintaining sales records. Thank you for your past and hopefully your future support for all of these issues.
Thank you, Ms. Hertzman, for sharing that with us. We have a couple of questions for the current panel, so please don't go anywhere. I believe the first hand I saw up was Delegate Carr. So Delegate Carr, please jump on in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is for Guy Andes at WSSC. So you spoke about the American Rescue Plan funds, ARPA funds. And my understanding is that counties in Maryland, Montgomery County, Prince George's County, both received ARPA funds, and that water infrastructure is one of the allowed uses for ARPA funds. So Montgomery and Prince George's County could have chosen to allocate some of those funds to WSSC, but it sounds like they chose not to do that. would you be able to find out for me whether any of the other water and sewer utilities in Maryland, or maybe even in the DC area, did receive ARPA funds, through their host local governments? Because I would be very curious to find out if there are differences in how that was handled. Thank you.
Question or request? I
think I heard a request there, Guy. So if you can,
I'll get that information.
see if you can get that information. Thank you, Delegate Carr. And you may want to, your hand's still up, so you may want to take that down. Delegate Charkoudian, you have a question, ma'am.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is also a question to Guy Andes. Guy, thanks for being here and for your advocacy on behalf of ratepayers who may need assistance. I actually have communicated with OHEP about this, and it's my understanding that the state is putting ARPA funds into assistance being available for paying water bills. They're doing it through the MD Think and the OHEP and DSS relationships that currently pay for other utility assistance, LIHEAP and EUSP. And according to my most recent communication with them, the money will be available January 2022. And they, a few weeks ago, said we're currently meeting with water utility companies to conduct conversations regarding outreach and vendor agreements. So when in your presentation earlier, I don't think you mentioned that. And I'm just curious about if you're familiar with that process, if there's a need for us to follow up with them to make sure they're coordinating with you. But it does seem like it's later than I would have hoped, but it is a large chunk of ARPA funds that will be available to pay, assist with the water utility ratepayers, in addition to the funds that you mentioned, which are those that other ratepayers pay into, and your employees pay into, and so on.
So we have been in, thank you for the question, and I appreciate your follow-up with OHEP on this matter. I saw the email that your staff sent me with your questions regarding this matter. We are in conversations with the Office of Home Energy Programs regarding this and the LIHWAP money that will be coming down through the recent bill that just was passed and signed into law today by the president. That LIHWAP money was $14 million. That's for the entire state. So we will be looking forward to working with OHEP on providing.
Guy, if I may interrupt real fast, for our viewing audience that doesn't understand acronyms and some of the.
I knew you were going to do this to me, Mr. Chairman. It's the Low Income Housing Water Assistance Program. I hope I passed that.
All right. Pass the test. Yeah, because a lot of folks just simply don't understand. So thank you.
I apologize. But we look forward to working with the government, the state agencies to provide any assistance that they can provide to our customers. One thing, like I said, we are $68 million in arrears right now with our customers. Our customers are $68 million in arrears with us. 1 in 5 of those customers are subject to turn off. So any assistance that we can get, we greatly appreciate it. And like I said, I will beat anybody to the table who puts a bill in that provides assistance to our customers for arrearage funding.
Delegate Charkoudian, does that satisfy your question?
The rest of it I can follow up offline. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. All right, well, we're ready for the next panel. I don't see any other hands raised. We're going to start with, and we're going to hopefully get through this time, to Chris Perry once again. Chris Perry, you're with the Montgomery County Renters Alliance. You'll have 3 minutes. Also on the panel, we have Alex Vasquez with CASA, 3 minutes. Jose Vallada, you are an individual, 2 minutes. Rosario Reyes, 2 minutes. Wendy Fuentes, 2 minutes. Barbara Novo, Do the Most Good, 3 minutes. Michelle Whitaker, 2 minutes. And Amy Wyckoff, 2 minutes. Folks, please respect the clock. And let's begin with Chris Perry.
Good evening, Montgomery County Senators and delegates. Can you hear me okay?
Thank you. Yes.
Good. My name is Chris Perry, and I serve as the Vice Chair of the Renters Alliance Board of Directors, the first and only registered nonprofit dedicated exclusively to renter outreach, education, organization, and advocacy. Tonight, our message is very simple. The pandemic has brought into stark relief how critical, stable, quality, affordable housing is to our health, welfare, and prosperity, and how much housing is increasingly at risk, especially for working families, seniors, and the poor. For these populations, the pandemic has put more than 100,000 families statewide and 15,000 families in Montgomery County at risk of eviction. During the last legislative session, the General Assembly and Senate considered more than 20 pieces of legislation written to protect renters, but only a very small number of these actually made it across the finish line. We know and appreciate that the vast majority of this delegation supports renter protection, but we cannot be content with being right until right is done. Now, during the upcoming General Assembly sessions, we urge the delegation to champion renters' rights, housing stability, and affordability, especially in 5 key priority areas. Those are: number 1, just cause eviction protection. No family should ever lose their home to eviction without a stated justifiable reason. Number 2, support for a renter's right to counsel, so that the principle of legal protection from eviction and other threats to housing is a reality, not just a promise. Number 3, annual data collection on eviction and housing demographics to develop effective policy locally and statewide. Number 4, eviction bans for diversion programming in our courts. And number 5, raising eviction and civil filing fees to end serial filings for eviction and to further support renter outreach and education. To neglect these legislative priorities is to risk future costs well beyond the humanitarian impacts of forcing families into crisis and homelessness. We need our delegation to redefine the relationship between landlords and tenants so that supplying critical, stable housing becomes a focus for maintaining thriving communities. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. We appreciate your comments, and we're moving on now to Alex Vasquez.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Corman, Chair Kramer, Vice Chair Carr, and Vice Chair Lee. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. My name is Alex Vasquez. I am today representing CASA. CASA is the largest immigrant advocacy organization in the region with over 120,000 Black and Brown immigrant members across our footprint. I want to start by thanking the entire delegation for your support and leadership in the support of CASA members and immigrants across the state in such an extraordinary way last session. Our top priority for December's special session will be around addressing the unfinished business of last session, overriding Governor Hogan's vetoes of the Dignity Not Detention Act, sponsored by members of this delegation like Delegate Stewart and Senator Smith, and the Maryland Driver Privacy Act. I want to remind the delegation that some of the most incredible cases of individuals impacted by these policies are residents of Montgomery County, like Jose Villalta, who was transferred to ICE after cutting down a tree, or Jose Hernandez, who was targeted and arrested by ICE after getting his driver's license, and so many whose family members have been impacted by ICE detention or risk deportation for getting their license. We are counting on you to override these vetoes in December. For the 2022 session, CASA is asking the delegation for your support and leadership on 2 bills. 1, universal representation, a right to counsel for detained immigrants facing deportation. This bill was introduced last session, and we need your help to ensure justice and fair chance in court for immigrant families in immigration proceedings. And 2, healthcare for immigrant families. The delegation, especially in the last 2 years, has become unfortunately familiar with the life and death situations that undocumented immigrants face without access to healthcare. While Montgomery Cares has been a great support to CASA members, being ineligible for Medicaid and Affordable Care Act has left thousands without coverage. This year, Delegate Pena and Senator Lamb will introduce a bill to remove immigration status as a barrier to care. Your leadership on these bills will be critical, and I thank you so much for your time. And I would also like to ask, so the next three members, we're going to be CASA members. I don't know if there's time allocated for translation in that process, as they are only Spanish speaking.
You know what? I don't know that we have that capacity, Mr. Vasquez. Let me check. Rebecca?
If possible, I could help translate if you could just give us a little bit more time allotted.
Well, let's go to then, I believe we have Mr. Viata. All right, why don't we, I'm not sure if we can do this with both of you. Let's give it a shot and find out.
Hola, buenas noches. Mi nombre es José Villalta. Soy miembro de CASA y vivo en Rockville. Y quizás me recuerden de cómo testificado en muchos eventos de CASA ante la Asamblea General. Y muchas veces todos conocen.
And Alex, why don't you interpret as we go along?
Sure, no worries. Good evening. My name is Jose Villalta. I am a CASA member and I live in Rockville. You may remember me as I have testified at many CASA events before the General Assembly many times. You know my story very well.
En el condado de Montgomery County es mi hogar y he vivido aquí durante más de 15 años y he hecho todo lo posible para Departamento de Recursos Naturales me detuvo en 2019 por ayudar a mi familia a cortar un árbol. En lugar de multarme, me tuvieron ilegalmente y talaron con ICE.
Montgomery County is my home. I've lived here for 15 years and done everything I can to play my part. I was stopped by the Department of Natural Resources Police in 2019 for helping my family member cut down a tree. Instead of fining me, they detained me illegally and transferred me to ICE.
Pasé meses detenido a pesar de que teníamos una ley de confianza en el condado de Montgomery sin protección y a nivel estatal. Las personas como yo no pueden tener una protección verdadera dentro de usted para anular el evento de.
I spent months in detention. Even though we had a trust act in Montgomery County, without protection at state level, people like me can't have true protection. And I'm counting on you to override the veto.
Además de esto, quiero pedir su apoyo sobre el derecho a un abogado para los inmigrantes que enfrentan la deportación. Hay tantas personas en mi comunidad que no tienen las herramientas para luchar por su caso o para solicitar el alivio que necesitan. Como pueden haber justicia real cuando la gente no tienen abogados para defenderse. Por favor, hagan de este proyecto de ley una prioridad este año. Gracias por la oportunidad y el tiempo.
In addition to this, I want to ask for your support on a right to counsel for immigrants facing deportation. There are so many people in my community who don't have tools to fight for their case or to know and apply for the relief that they need. How can there be real justice when people don't have lawyers to defend themselves? Please make this bill a priority this year, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Viata. We appreciate your sharing your story with us. And Mr. Vasquez, are you staying with us for Ms. Reyes? Is that the case? If so, she is up.
Yes, that's correct. She's sitting right next to me. So,
Buenas noches. Gracias por la oportunidad de hablar hoy. Mi nombre es Rosario Reyes y soy miembro con casa.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk this evening. My name is Rosario Reyes and I am a CASA member.
Vivo en la ciudad de Gaithersburg y estoy aquí hoy para pedir su apoyo para expandir la extensión médica a todos los residentes del estado de Maryland.
I live in Gaithersburg and I'm here today to ask for your support in expanding healthcare to all Maryland residents,
independientemente de su estatus migratorio.
regardless of immigration status.
Como madre, hija, hermana, indocumentada, me veo afectada en mi historia por no tener documentos. No puedo atender a citas médicas. Necesito mamografías.
As a mother, as a wife, as a sister, as a person of the community, I am deeply impacted by not having healthcare due to my immigration status. Healthcare that would help me get physicals done, but also important visits like a mammogram.
Muchas por no tener un seguro, cuando vamos a atenderlos es demasiado tarde. Ya el cáncer ha invadido nuestro cuerpo.
For many of us, not having healthcare is very dire. For many of us, it's too late to make those frequent visits. For example, people finding out too late that they have cancer.
Necesitamos un seguro con urgencia, ya que no podemos ir a los hospitales porque tenemos que pagar para ir. Y el no tener un seguro médico es afectado no solo a uno como persona, sino a toda la familia en la salud mental, pensando los hijos, mi mamá está enferma, se va a morir, no podemos atender en un hospital. Urge que tomen atención a esta situación.
And so it is important to have healthcare for all, especially during situations of emergency, such as my own mom, who's, I'm not doing well in her health. And so not only does this impact a person who cannot afford healthcare, who cannot get a healthcare, but also it impacts the family as a whole.
La mayoría de las personas en nuestra comunidad cumplen con todos los requisitos para Medicaid. Solo nuestro estatus migratorio es la barrera más grande que tenemos.
The majority of people in our community meet all of the qualifications for Medicaid. It's only our immigration status that is the barrier.
Pagamos impuestos.
We pay taxes.
Tenemos familia aquí.
We have families here.
Y nuestras familias necesitan cuidados médicos.
And our families need health care.
Les pedimos su apoyo.
We ask for your support.
El tiempo es ahora.
The time is now.
No esperemos las elecciones.
Let's not wait for elections.
Cumplan su promesa.
Please, please, please make sure that you vote for this.
Y mi gratitud
And my gratitude
y agradecimiento estará con ustedes.
and my gratitude with you.
Gracias por su apoyo.
Thank you guys for your support.
Thank you, Ms. Reyes, and we wish your mother a speedy recovery and the very best. We now have Wendy Fuentes.
Wendy is unfortunately sick this evening, but we have Rafael who is going to be speaking on her behalf.
I would ask that you move very quickly, please, Alex. We normally do not allow for folks to step in and fill in for those who are not with us. So, but go right ahead and please move quickly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Muy buenas noches a todos, damas y caballeros.
Good evening, everyone.
Mi nombre es Rafael Lacayo y soy miembro de casa y vivo en el condado de Rockville, Maryland.
My name is Rafael and I am a resident of Rockville, Maryland.
Estoy aquí como residente del condado de Montgomery y como inmigrante para pedir su apoyo para anular los vetos del gobernador sobre la ley de dignidad, no detención y la ley de privacidad del conductor de Maryland.
I'm here as a Montgomery County resident and an immigrant to ask for your support in overriding the governor's vetoes on Dignity Not Detention Act and Maryland Privacy Act.
Este veto a estas leyes ayudarían a proteger y a dar seguridad a cientos de inmigrantes trabajadores de este estado.
These pieces of legislation would help protect the hundreds of hardworking immigrants across the state.
Más recientemente, muchos inmigrantes como yo tuvimos que trabajar durante la pandemia para asegurar la supervivencia de nuestras familias y comunidades.
Most recently, many immigrants like myself had to work during the pandemic to ensure the survival of our families and communities.
Saber que Maryland apoya, protege y da seguridad a los inmigrantes es una gran prioridad para mí y para todos.
Knowing that Maryland supports and protects immigrants is a huge priority for me.
Por eso estoy aquí para instarlos a que apoyen para anular estos vetos. Muchas gracias por su atención.
And that's why I'm here to urge you guys to override the vetoes. Thank you so much for your time.
Great. Thank you all very much for your compelling testimony. We very much appreciate it. Stay healthy. Alex, thank you for your interpreting services. Very much appreciated. Stay healthy. And we're moving on to Barbara, please do the most good. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairs Kramer and Corman and the entire Montgomery County delegation for everything you do, including providing us this opportunity tonight. I am Barbara Naveau, Director of Do the Most Good, a progressive grassroots organization with several thousand members, the majority of whom live in Montgomery County. This is the 5th time I've testified in support of legislation authorizing Montgomery County to adopt a ranked choice or approval voting method for certain local races. The reasons we support this enabling legislation haven't changed over the years, and I'll address those in a minute. Do the Most Good focuses on elections and on making our democracy work for everyone. We've been active in over 75 elections in Maryland and across America over the last 5 years, but never before has the state of our democracy been so tenuous and the threats to it so real. And that's why this year, Maryland must stand up as a staunch defender of democracy and the voice of the people. The Brennan Center for Justice reported in its October Voting Laws Roundup that 19 states had enacted 33 laws that make it harder for Americans to vote. During this time, and even before, Maryland and other jurisdictions have enacted numerous statutes to expand access to the ballot box. But today's climate demands that we codify the protections and enhancements that will let the voice of every person be heard, not only to safeguard our rights, but as a role model for others. Enabling legislation provides a vital opportunity to give our county more autonomy and to empower the voices of all voters. Across America, 22 jurisdictions, including Tacoma Park, used ranked. RCV was on the ballot this November in Michigan, Maine, and Colorado cities, and all 3 won. 53 jurisdictions expect to use RCV in their next elections or in the one after. It's time for Montgomery County to join their ranks. In 2022, thanks to a restructuring of our county council, residents of East County will finally have a district of their own and the opportunity to elect a council member who will put them first. Don't they also deserve a voting method that will hear each person's voice and help to ensure that the candidate elected is preferred by a majority of those voters? These same elections in 2018 demonstrated that in our plurality-based system, it's not unusual for the winner to be affirmatively disliked by the majority of voters. Candidates in single seat races in 2018 won with 25 or 35% of the vote. Winners in multiple seat races won with as little as 8% of the vote. It's no surprise that many voters felt the election process was broken.
No
and that-
time to wrap it up for us.
Okay, all right. And they were constrained from expressing their full preferences. We can and we must do better. And we look forward to working together to get this bill passed this year.
Thank you, Ms. Nouveau. We appreciate that. And you're right, while other states have been stepping backwards on voters' rights, Maryland has been a leader in the nation on expanding our democracy. With that, how about Michelle Whitaker? You have 2 minutes, please.
Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you to the delegation for holding this hearing and giving residents the opportunity to have their voice be heard. My name is Michelle Whitaker. I'm a resident of Kensington, and I'm an electoral reform advocate who works with great folks like Barbara across the state to bring better elections to Maryland. Some of the shared visions that we have in our coalition is around empowering voters, fostering positive campaigning, creating fair representation, and transparency and election integrity for all. I asked the delegation to continue the work that we've done over the last 3 years to advance voting methods in Montgomery County and to support MC 1322. We need better voting methods, and we are falling behind other jurisdictions that have introduced and taken the step forward to use ranked choice voting or other methods to give voters a more powerful voice in their elections, especially when we have multiple candidates running for office. Along with better elections, I also want to take a moment as a resident and a renter to urge the delegation to take the necessary steps to support struggling renters across Maryland and especially in Montgomery County. We need rent stabilization, we need just cause eviction protection, and we need to make sure all emergency COVID funding for rent relief gets to families in need now. We are in emergency right now with housing, and I hope you will take action both on voting and renters' rights and restoring people into their houses. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Whitaker. All right, the last member of this panel, Amy Wyckoff, if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Yes, you are. Members of the Montgomery County delegation, thank you for this opportunity to testify. My name is Amy Wyckoff, and I have lived in Montgomery County for 34 years. I am requesting that you do not override Governor Hogan's vetoes of House Bill 16 and House Bill 23. House Bill 16, the Dignity Not Detention Act, was originally a bill limiting immigration detention contracts. However, at the 11th hour, it was amended to include elements of the Trust Act, which turned it into a statewide sanctuary bill. It prohibits state and local law enforcement from asking about anyone's immigration status or birthplace. It also forbids detaining or extending the detention of anyone on suspicion of being an illegal alien, including their possible transfer to federal immigration authorities unless required by federal law. Frederick County Sheriff Chuck Jenkins was among many leaders of law enforcement who condemned the bill. He noted that through his department's cooperation with ICE via the 287G program, his office has removed over 1,500 criminals from our streets since 2008, including many members of MS-13. According to Governor Hogan, flawed legislation such as this sets a dangerous precedent regarding the state's commitment to upholding the law and ensuring the safety of our citizens, end quote. If the legislature insists on overriding these vetoes, Maryland will follow the path set by Montgomery County beginning in 2014. Illegal aliens have viewed our county as a safe haven, and criminals hiding in immigrant communities have preyed on our citizens. In 2019, the community was outraged when at least 9 sexual assaults were committed in the space of only a couple months, all by criminal illegal aliens. Sanctuary policies act as a magnet for further illegal immigration, undermining our nation's laws and destroying legal citizens' faith in our elected officials' ability to fulfill their highest priority, that of keeping us safe. I therefore implore you to uphold the governor's vetoes of HB 16 and HB 23. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not see any questions for this. Oh, Delegate Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, my question's for Amy Wyckoff. Hi, Amy.
Hi.
Thank you for your testimony. So something you and I have in common, we are both not immigrants, but we are migrants. We both moved to Maryland from the same community in Ohio. Matter of fact, we went to the same high school a few years apart. And I think you were the same class as my sister. But, you know, I remember the town where we grew up in was a very sort of a melting pot community, very diverse, a lot of immigrants, folks from all different nationalities. And, you know, as I've gotten older, I've enjoyed kind of looking into my own family history and learning about, you know, where I came from, like my great grandmother who immigrated from Canada into, you know, across Lake Erie. I'm just curious, you know, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. You know, what's your own family story? I'm assuming you have immigrants as, you know, grandparents or great grandparents or great great grandparents. You know, what have you learned about them and their story and where they came from?
Well, thank you. All of my grandparents came from Russia or Eastern Europe or the Baltic area. And the important thing is that they came here legally. Allowing people to be here illegally undermines and disrespects all the people who came here legally. There are people for whom it takes 10 years or more to go through all the hoops to become legal American citizens. Sometimes it costs a lot of money. We are undermining the whole security of our nation by having open borders. Open borders in the South mean 50 open borders. And I know people personally whose children have been separated permanently from their father because he was run over by a drunken illegal alien. So this is an extremely important issue, and it's a wonderful, diverse nation. That's not the issue. We can be extremely welcoming, but we're allowed to control who comes in here. Other countries all over the world do the same.
Okay, thank you, Delegate Carr. My favorite story about your family history is that you had a ancestor in the Maryland General Assembly. We'll now move on to our next panel. We're gonna do a throwback to first Nicole Hansel-Mundell with Out for Justice. Then we will go to Janice Sartucci with Parents Coalition Montgomery County, Allison Bennett, who's testifying as an individual, Paul Geller, individual, Carlin Ponder, Silver Spring Justice Coalition, and Laura Mitchell with MCC PTA, the Montgomery County Coalition of Parent Teachers Associations, I believe is what the acronym stands for. Member organizations get 3 minutes. If you're testifying as an individual, you get 2. Let's please start with Nicole Hanson-Mundell.
Thank you for having me, and excuse me, I had to run and get my daughter from her job, you know, so I got a working kid. So excuse me for being in the car, but thank you all so much for having me. I am Nicole Hanson-Mundell, for the record. I'm Executive Director of Out for Justice, a nonprofit org that advocates for individuals with criminal records, policy reform, and an organization that really helps to stabilize the reentry community as it comes out to navigate society and helps to fill the gaps for government when government fails to do its job to ensure that people have a successful reentry, right? One of those things that is important for you all to know is that women coming out of our prisons and jails are not given adequate reentry support. That means that individuals who are pre-release eligible, these are women who are on their way home within 18 months of their release. The Department of Corrections has committed in its own COMAR laws that it will engage in a proper reentry, access to 21st century jobs, access to family reunification, access to housing, right? All of these things that make you all really great citizens and community and make you all productive for your children. Our women do not have that. There are 0, I quote 0, separate brick and mortar facilities in the state of Maryland, while men have over 7, right? This is a piece of legislation that you all collectively passed. However, we find ourselves as an unfunded piece of legislation. And we all know that legislation that is not funded, that is not supported by the state, is not productive, it is not successful. And so this year, I really urge you all to be a part of encouraging your fellow members at Budget and Tax and Appropriations to really fully fund this effort. And lastly, the other issue I would encourage you all to become a part of and make sure we stay the state that ensures voting rights for formerly and currently incarcerated people. When you are in pretrial, not yet convicted of anything, you have access to the ballot. And any one of us, because this country incarcerates 1 in 3 people have engaged in the criminal legal system, any of you could be pulled over for a number of things and find yourself in the local jail during election time. That does not mean that you should not have access to the ballot. And so we want you to ensure that we strengthen our laws around ensuring that people coming out of our prisons and jails have access to the ballot, are educated about the ballot, and are able to cast that ballot during election time. And if I may, Chair.
Nicole, thank you. I appreciate your perseverance getting on and your testimony. Let's turn to Janice Sartucci.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Janice Zink Sartucci, and I'm a member of the Parents Coalition of Montgomery County, Maryland. Should major educational technology purchases be a surprise? What happens when a public school system with an operating budget of $2.7 billion is allowed to spend education funding without a public process? The image provided to you this evening in your packet shows you what happens. The image shows what MCPS classrooms look like this fall as sent to us by MCPS teachers. MCPS has about 8,100 classrooms. This fall, those classrooms are receiving a new flat panel screen that is being installed in front of the existing Promethean boards. The Promethean boards were installed in front of the existing chalkboards and projector screens. The projector screen is now unusable, the chalkboard is now unusable, and now the Promethean board is unusable. Students now look up at the front of their classrooms and see unusable educational resources piling up. How did the flat panel screens arrive? Teachers, the public, and even the Board of Education don't know. Boxlight interactive flat panels are not mentioned anywhere in Montgomery County Board of Education minutes or agendas. Yet Boxlight announced a deal and pilot with MCPS back in 2019. Yet no mention of this deal or the pilot of this product has appeared in Board of Education minutes. Currently, Maryland law allows public school administrators to spend tens of millions of dollars without RFPs, bids, public notice, or even votes of our Board of Education. About $45 million of functional, paid-for educational resources are now unusable because of the lack of a public process. Classroom floor space is also now diminished as each new piece of equipment is being installed in front of the previous equipment. This lack of a public process means that this fall, MCPS teachers have had to retool their lesson plans overnight. One day they were teaching on Promethean boards, the next day they had to learn how to use the Boxlight screen. Back in 2008, I uncovered the purchase of about $20 million of Promethean boards made without Board of Education discussion or vote. That investigation was validated by a report from the Montgomery County Inspector General. We know in Maryland these types of surreptitious, no-bid education purchases are perfectly legal, but are they the best and highest use of precious education dollars? Might it be time for the legislature to address these expenditures? When the Maryland legislature passed the Minority Business Utilization Program in Montgomery County, they limited that section to the competitive bid process. MCPS can easily skirt that law by buying without competitive bids, and when they do so, there is no requirement for consideration of minority businesses. It's time for the Maryland legislature to close these loopholes and tighten up the public school procurement process. If the legislature doesn't act soon, there may not be enough room for students in the classrooms amid all of the unusual tech junk. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Janice. Let's turn now to Paul Geller.
Good evening, senators and delegates. And I'd like to start out with a special shout out to Rebecca Stryer. Rebecca does an excellent job of disseminating information to everyone who's interested in what the Montgomery County delegation has been doing. And I want to make sure that everyone knows that it's greatly appreciated, everything that Rebecca is doing, and she gets back to you promptly. So thank you to Rebecca for everything that you do. Two things I wanted to discuss this evening. First is I want to encourage our delegation to introduce legislation to get solar panel systems into all of our public schools in Maryland wherever possible and practical. I say this because for the cost of about 7 years of powering a typical school, you could actually have 20 plus years use out of a solar power system. This basically means that for 13 plus years, you're getting free power. This is operating budget funds that could easily be used to hire new teachers, hire new staff, and also to do other projects that are needed around public school systems. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, I'd like to encourage you once again to change the law regarding how casino gambling revenues are split. I'm going to ask you for 50% of all casino gambling revenues to go to our public schools in the state. Currently, we're only getting 15% of that money for public schools. And when voters were asked in 2008 and 2012 to vote on this, the primary purpose of the initiative was for education, and that hasn't been the case. So I ask you to please address both of those issues. And one last note, Delegate Stewart, it is your birthday today. Thank you not only for all that you do, but also thank you for being on this call tonight. It's very nice on your birthday to do that. And I thank you all for your service to the community.
Thank you, Paul. Happy birthday, Vaughn. And let's turn now to Allison Bennett.
Thank you. Montgomery County Delegation. My name is Allison Bennett and I'm a senior at BCC High School in Bethesda. My entire household is fully vaccinated and my parents have gotten their booster shots. I plan on to get mine in about a month when the CDC authorizes it for people over 18. And my 12-year-old brother is going to get his when he can. The issue is that other Maryland families have chosen not to be vaccinated, which endangers the public because they're more likely to get and spread the disease. Even worse, the disease can mutate and eventually render vaccines useless. Marylanders have to do their part to make sure this does not happen. Everyone over the age of 5 can go to their local pharmacy and get the shots, and this should be mandated. It already is for employees of large companies, but not for public schools such as MCPS, PG County Public Schools, etc. For the next legislative session, the state of Maryland should prioritize a vaccine mandate for its public school students. This will make our schools safer and set an example for other states. For example, at my school, we take off our masks to eat lunch in the hallways and in classrooms. This obviously risks the spread of COVID, and personally, my school hasn't had that many cases. When we first came into in-person school, we did have some cases, but I haven't gotten notifications about cases recently. But if everyone's vaccinated, it's going to be a lot safer because that way we know that the disease is less likely to spread within our schools since we're taking off our masks like at least once a day. At MCPS, there's already a vaccine mandate for winter athletes. And this actually makes me feel safe because I'm going to be managing my school's basketball team this winter. And I just feel safe knowing that they're all vaccinated, especially since they're going to be running up and down the court. And I think I also remember like watching them like try out and they were also not wearing masks because, well, they're all vaccinated and masks could also just like really be an issue for them. But there should be a grace period because 5 to 11-year-olds are only eligible as of late. But by beginning of the next school year, there should be a mandate for students. You already need vaccines to go to school, so it won't be a hassle adding another vaccine to that list. If Maryland and states want to have success keeping COVID at bay, other states will see this progress and do the same, which will create a ripple effect and in turn decrease the rate of COVID transmission nationwide. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Allison. We love hearing from students. Carlene Ponder, Silver Spring Justice Coalition.
Yes, hi, I'm Carlene Ponder, Silver Spring Justice Coalition. We were formed after the killing of Robert White by a Montgomery County police officer in 2018. We're a coalition of grassroots community organizations and residents of Montgomery County that work to eliminate harm by police while empowering community and individuals. We're a member of the Maryland Coalition for Justice and Police Accountability. And throughout the session, we will work to support their legislative priorities. Right now, we're asking for your commitment to legislation that continues to move forward with police-free schools in Maryland, with a focus on funding for student mental health support instead of policing, and other legislative efforts to stem the school-to-prison pipeline. We also ask you to support legislation to allow Montgomery County to get police out of the business of traffic enforcement, in part by allowing the county to move automated traffic enforcement from MCPD to the Department of Transportation. SSJC also supports legislation to reform and restrict qualified immunity for police. Police immunity is a license to kill. And while we can only do so much to address this obstacle to police reform under state law, we understand that Delegate Wilkins will be introducing a bill that takes important steps in the right direction. SSJC has been working closely with Delegate Leslie Lopez, to strengthen the body-worn camera bill that passed last session. Our bill is called Quam's Law in memory of Kwamina Okran, a young Black man who was killed last year by plainclothes Gaithersburg City Police who are not wearing body cameras. A grand jury recently chose not to charge those officers based on the officer's own testimony because there was no recording to objectively show the jurors and the community what happened. Last session's body-worn camera law would not have changed this result because that law does not require plainclothes or municipal police officers to wear body-worn cameras. Therefore, our bill does the following. It requires all on-duty officers, including plainclothes officers, to wear body-worn cameras when interacting with the public. Undercover officers would not be required to wear cameras when their supervisors determine it would jeopardize the officer's safety. It expands the body-worn camera requirements to municipalities who were left out of last year's bill. It requires off-duty officers to wear body-worn cameras when they are in public and carrying their service weapon, including when working secondary employment. If an officer wears their gun, they must take their badge and their body-worn camera. It's as simple as that. Finally, we asked the legislature to fully fund 988, the national 3-digit crisis number coming in July 2022. Full funding includes an expansion of mobile crisis units, investing in stabilization centers that are not hospitals or jails, and clearly delegating that trained mental health and peer support specialists are in charge of their calls. Police must stand down as they have repeatedly failed to de-escalate when Black and brown people are in crisis. Thank you so much. That is our testimony.
Thank you. And now we'll go to Laura Mitchell.
Good evening. Thank you for hearing from us all tonight. I am speaking on behalf of MCC PTA, the Montgomery County Council of PTA's recently adopted priorities, and we're focusing mostly on student health and well-being this year. First, I urge the delegation to pass a statewide requirement to implement Handle with Care to identify childhood trauma and provide appropriate trauma-informed care to mitigate long-term effects of that trauma. ACEs have tremendous long-term effects, including substance use and suicide and mental health issues. Also, to provide such resources such as tutoring, counseling support, and to students who are experiencing significant learning loss and behavioral and mental health challenges in our schools. Social emotional distress and other stressors are really out of control right now in our schools. It's a major concern for not just our students, but our staff, and it's spiraling. I urge the passing of the Juvenile Interrogation Protection Act. We shouldn't be traumatizing our students in schools. And for some, just speaking with an officer is traumatizing, especially if their parents are not present. And then similarly to the Start Talking Maryland Act, we ask that you require the schools to provide age-appropriate, evidence-based gun safety, violence, online bullying, and childhood obesity and suicide guided lessons in all schools and all grades. We need to address, track, and report our numbers of incidences of biases and discrimination, bullying, hatred, sexual and other harassment, abuse, and assaults of students. That all needs to be transparent. We should know what's going on in our schools, disaggregated, of course. And our LGBTQ supports, having inclusive schools, protections for both our physical health and mental health of our LGBTQ youth. We have very few resources for mental health and substance use treatment for our youth in Maryland, and even fewer for LGBTQ youth in crisis, 42% of whom seriously considered attempting suicide in the past year. Just this past week, I had a child at an ER, and they were not treated for their mental health crisis because they didn't know where to put a trans child with the males or the females. And that's unacceptable. And also to revisit the SRO model to support student mental health supports in our schools. Counselors and not cops is very important. We've done that in Montgomery County, and I urge you to do that statewide. I wasn't sure I'd have time, but one point on the Handle with Care. In making that, we're the 18th county implementing that. We have a pilot starting yesterday, in Montgomery County, but even if every county employs that process, that leaves out the state police, and they're the ones that in many areas respond to the most traumatic calls, and the schools are missing those notifications that that child has witnessed or experienced a trauma and may need additional supports. Thank you very much for hearing us.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mitchell. I see we have a question from Senator Kagan, so please jump on in there.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two brief things. Mr. Geller, Paul, thank you so much for bringing up the concept of solar or renewable schools. I just want everybody to know that the federal infrastructure bill that was signed into law by President Biden today includes a new program. And I want to give a shout out to our Congressman, Jamie Raskin, who passed along information about a bill that we're working on actually for solar and renewable energy for incentives for nonprofits. But there is $50 million at the federal level for nonprofits at $500 million for public schools. So that is in today's infrastructure bill. The second thing I want to mention just briefly to Ms. Ponder, I'm really glad that you mentioned 988. The 911 Commission is certainly cognizant of the issue. It's a challenge and it's a problem nationally that funding has not been figured out by any of the federal agencies or by Congress. And I think almost everybody's going to miss the deadline. I doubt that we're going to solve it in Maryland before it's supposed to go into effect. But we do need to keep talking about it because suicide prevention and hotlines is critically important. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Kagan. I don't see any other questions. So let's, pardon me, move on to the next panel. We have Naomi Nim. With Silver Spring Justice Coalition, you will have 2 minutes. Stephanie Rosen, NAMI Montgomery County, you will have 3 minutes. Shannon Parkin, NAMI Montgomery, you will have 2 minutes. Susan Karen, Maryland Catholics for Action, you'll have 3 minutes. Jennifer Gross, you'll have 2 minutes. Diana Phillip, Bodily Autonomy Work Group, you will have 3 minutes. And the last person on this panel, Anushka Vakil, Maryland Justice Project, you will have 3 minutes. So let's begin with Ms. Nim.
Good evening, delegation members. Thank you for having us this evening. The Silver Spring Justice Coalition is working to end the murders of mentally ill people, primarily Black men, by county police. Tragedy continues to shake this community. We must increase funding for mental health crisis teams in order to reduce the criminalization and high risk of harm to mentally ill individuals. Pre-pandemic predictions of the number of mobile units needed in the county are unrealistic due to the mental health crisis we are seeing, with a marked increase in mental illness among youth. We are very grateful to Delegate Charkoudian for her outstanding leadership on mental health, and we urge her to reintroduce legislation to require the deployment of mental health professionals rather than police when someone is experiencing a mental health crisis. The state should establish this standard regardless of whether a jurisdiction seeks mental health funding from the state. State funding should support community-based peer programs that bolster crisis response. Not only will more people in need seek out treatment when supported by their peers, but peer programs will counter the fear that the only way to receive help is to call the police. Community members are the best resource to allay fears and stigma about seeking help for mental illness. Let's increase resources and access well before there is a crisis, which far too often is the first point of contact for treatment. Mental health care should be widely available regardless of income, race, ethnicity, gender, insurance, immigration status, housing status, and English proficiency. Finally, let's increase the number of mental health providers in Maryland. Make telehealth a standard option, offer quick and easy reciprocity to licensed clinicians from every other state, and require market level reimbursement by insurance companies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Nim. Let's move on to Stephanie Rosen, please.
Hi, good evening. Thank you all for working throughout the evening. So dear delegates and senators of the Montgomery County delegation, I'm Stephanie Rosen, and I'm the executive director of the National Alliance on Mental Illness of Montgomery County, Maryland, or NAMI-MC. NAMI, if you're not familiar with it, is the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization dedicated to building better lives for all affected by mental illness. And a key service that NAMI-MC provides is that we build communities of peers to provide support, education, and advocacy. Just mentioned by our last testimony, that peer support is so important to overcoming stigma and to opening doors to treatment. So since I know that constituents with mental illness and affected by mental illness contact you, please, I want to personally invite you to learn more about what we do and the free programs that we provide. In the last year and a half since the pandemic began, our participation in our free support programs, support groups and classes has increased by 40%. So for more information, visit us online, call our helpline. But today I'm testifying to request that you work towards providing an appropriate and sustainable funding source for the new 988 mental health crisis line. We believe that mental health crisis deserves an appropriate mental health response and that the 988 line is an important and positive step towards that goal. In fact, in communities that have a strong mental health crisis line, they've been able to resolve those crises over the phone for more than 80% of their callers. This diversion from police, mobile dispatch, and emergency departments saves money and reduces trauma. So in Montgomery County, our friends at Everymind will manage the system, and they're currently under-resourced. In fact, up to 40% of their staff are unpaid volunteers. In other parts of the state, most notably Baltimore, they've received discretionary grants allowing them to bolster their staffing and purchase state-of-the-art technology known as care traffic control. It's becoming a national model, and we want neighboring counties, including Montgomery County, to have the needed resources to ensure that residents who call receive the highest quality of care. We also consider this a parity issue, as callers to 988 should expect the same response time and quality of care that callers to 911 receive for non-mental health emergencies. As you know, the FCC has authorized states to levy a user fee on phones to cover 988 services, and Maryland already levies a user fee to cover 911. 4 states, including Virginia, have already passed legislation towards funding 988, and at least 11 other states have legislation in the pipeline. So for too long, our system has been underfunded and undervalued. NAMI Maryland's going to be working with you guys on this, and we really appreciate figuring out a long-term sustainable funding solution. Thank you for your consideration and for everything you've been doing in Annapolis for individuals living with mental illness and their families.
Thank you, Ms. Rosen. Very important work you're doing, and thank you for doing it. Shannon Parkin, you are up.
Thank you. My name is Shannon Parkin. I am a suicide attempt survivor. In 2015, after decades of depression, I stepped in front of a metro train. To save my life, doctors had to amputate portions of both my feet. Through the support of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, my depression has been in full remission, and I have been riding the metro independently, fully independently, for 3 years. I currently volunteer with NAMI as our inner own voice speaker and connection recovery facilitator. I am testifying today to request that you work to provide sustainable funding for the new 988 mental health crisis lines. I know personally that in the midst of a suicidal crisis, I certainly did not have the mental ability to call a 10-digit number. 988 provides an easy way for people to receive needed support. I know personally how skilled both the Everymind staff is as they receive suicide prevention calls, and the NAMI staff is as they support those with mental health challenges. These programs need funding. Suicide is often preventable. For every person who dies by suicide annually, more than 25 suicide attempts are made. Over 90% of people who attempt suicide go on to live out their lives. I am one of those people. I speak to you tonight with partial feet as a living, breathing, walking testimony that the dollars you allocate to funding organizations such as NAMI and Every Mind will save lives and empower individuals to live fully, sharing hope. Thank you.
Ms. Parkin, thank you very much for sharing that compelling personal story. We appreciate your taking the time to do so and wish you the very best going forward. Next up, we have Susan Karen. Susan, good to see you, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Senator Kramer. Good evening. My name is Susan Karen, and just before I share my testimony, I just want to say that my family has been a beneficiary of NAMI programs, and they're absolutely terrific. So I ditto Stephanie's invitation, and I also ditto the 988 sustainable funding. But I'm here today representing Maryland Catholics for Action. We are a coalition of lay and religious Catholics who support victims' rights related to the clergy sexual abuse scandal. We feel that our leaders have not provided the transparency and accountability necessary to ensure that these criminal activities will end. A recent 2019 poll by The Economist reveals that many U.S. Catholics share our view. According to the poll, 1 in 3 U.S. Catholics report having an unfavorable view of our bishops because of the scandal. For several years, our organization has advocated in Annapolis for passage of the Hidden Predator Act. This would provide support and access for adult survivors and also protective care for children. We are part of a broad coalition that includes the NAACP, the Beau Biden Foundation, Maryland's Academy of Pediatrics, the Teamsters, and Montgomery County Young Dems. Across this country, state legislators are recognizing that changes need to happen. Since 2018, 1/3 of states have passed laws extending the statute of limitations for civil cases, and 16 states, including DC, have established look-back windows. On average, an abuser will have over 100 victims in the course of their lifetime. In states where look-back windows are opened, hidden predators are exposed. In Minnesota, under their 3-year look-back, 125 predators were identified. In California, with just a 1-year look back, 300 predators were identified. Those who are sexually abused as children need to have their abusers held accountable, and they deserve a pathway to justice. Maryland can and must do better. Please prioritize passage of the Hidden Predator Act during the 2022 legislative session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we are moving on to Jennifer Gross. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the entire delegation for your hard work and for being here so late tonight. I am also here to strongly urge all of you to support the Hidden Predator Act. I won't reiterate what Susan spoke of. I 100% agree with everything she had. I'll share my perspective as a clinical social worker who's worked for 27 years in the field of child abuse and neglect. I'm also a certified sex offender treatment provider, and I've worked with convicted sex offenders for over 20 years. I've worked with adult survivors of abuse, children who were abused in child advocacy centers. I'm a lifelong Catholic, and I've worked with the Catholic Church on this issue as well. And I wholeheartedly support the passage of this bill. Some of our Maryland delegates, thank you, have been leaders in raising the issue of the ACE, the Adverse Childhood Experiences, throughout the state and getting more movement on that. And as we all know, child sexual abuse is one of those adverse childhood conditions that dramatically and negatively impacts our children and our adult survivors. This is most child sexual abuse is never reported. Most offenders are never caught. In my experience as a professional and working with offenders, it's maybe once in over 20 years I've worked with convicted offenders have I had an offender leave treatment with only admitting to one victim. So most offenders have more than one victim. And this legislation, should it be passed, will help us uncover previously unknown offenders so we can get safety to our children that many of them still have access to. It will also provide a conduit for healing for adult survivors, because we know the average age of disclosure of child sexual abuse is not until people are in their 50s. And so to eliminate this statute of limitation will do two things: provide a conduit to safety and justice for adult survivors, and provide a clear path to safety for our children, and help for those who are hurting children, because they can get helped so they learn how to make the correct choices to not hurt others. Thank you for your time and consideration in this matter.
Thank you, Ms. Gross. We appreciate that. Next is Diana Phillip. You have 3 minutes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Diana Phillip. I am the co-chair for the Bodily Autonomy Work Group of the People's Commission to Decriminalize Maryland. The People's Commission exists to reduce the disparate impact of the justice system on youth and adults who've been historically targeted and marginalized by local and state criminal and juvenile laws based on their race, gender, disability, or socioeconomic status. Through a statewide collaboration with organizations and affected individuals, the People's Commission explores and identifies specific ways that criminal laws disproportionately harm historically marginalized groups. Decriminalization means the elimination of policies and practices that expose marginalized communities to increased justice involvement, not because of a legitimate public safety concern, but primarily because of behaviors and conduct that arise from their status or identity. The Bodily Autonomy Work Group of the People's Commission to Decriminalize Maryland has been engaged in policy research with NARA Approach Towards Maryland for the last few years on legislation to prohibit the criminalization of pregnancy outcomes. And we have coming to us, the result is the Pregnant Persons Dignity Act, a bill to be introduced during the 2022 Maryland General Assembly, sponsored by Delegate Nicole Williams and Senator Will Smith. Although Maryland is among best practice states with respect to pedicide law, including explicit recognition that the murder and manslaughter provisions are inapplicable to an act or omission of a pregnant person with respect to a fetus they are carrying, there's been renewed hostility toward abortion rights in neighboring states, and the proliferation of arrests across the country of people for acts or omissions during pregnancy believed to have been caused a risk to fetal health, and the anticipated increase of people turning to self-managed abortion as abortion pills become more available and abortion clinics are shuttered. States that intend to be abortion safe zones must ensure that people are safe from arrest for their reproductive decisions and their experiences. And so what this bill does, it has 4 provisions. The first is a pregnant person is not liable for civil damages or subject to criminal investigation or penalty for terminating or attempting to terminate the person's own pregnancy under any circumstances. The second is the state does not have the authority to criminally investigate or penalize a pregnant person who's experienced a miscarriage, a neonatal death related to a failure to act or stillbirth. The third is that a person is not subject to criminal penalties or civil damages for aiding, informing, or in any way assisting a pregnant person in terminating or seeking to terminate the person's pregnancy. And the fourth, that a person may bring a cause of action for damages if the person was subject to unlawful arrest or criminal investigation for a violation of any of these provisions. So the idea is that no person should fear arrest for government control or retribution as a result of a pregnancy or any outcome of pregnancy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Phillip. Good to see you. The last person on this panel, Anushka. And Anushka, I don't want to mispronounce your last name, so I'm going to let you do it. Are you with us? And you have 3 minutes, please.
Thank you so much, Chairman. My name is Anushka Vakil, and I am a fellow at the Maryland Justice Project. The Maryland Justice Project fights for the rights of incarcerated individuals in Maryland and was founded by a formerly incarcerated woman. In the 2022 session, our legislative priorities focused on two pieces of legislation, which are both targeted at keeping families together when a caretaker is incarcerated. Both of these bills are sponsored by Senator Jill Carter and Delegate Leslie Lopez. So the Prevention of Forced Infant Separation Act, which is our first bill, is a bill that will ensure incarcerated pregnant women are not separated from their infants after birth. Earlier today, I believe you heard from Nicole Hansen from Out for Justice about the Gender Responsive Pre-Release Act, which authorized a pre-release unit for women. We are grateful for the Montgomery County delegation's support for this legislation, especially the sponsorship of Delegate Crutchfield. The MJP asks for your support in ensuring that this pre-release center meets the needs of all women in Maryland, specifically pregnant women. The Prevention of Forced Infant Separation Act allows pre-release eligible women who are pregnant from Montgomery County and counties all across Maryland to be transferred to this pre-release center for the duration of their pregnancy and up to 1 year postpartum. This prevents the forced separation of infants from incarcerated mothers less than 48 hours after birth, which is the standard practice in Maryland. This legislation is crucial in keeping infants with their mothers for that first year of life, which we know is the most important year of development for young infants. This act also permits additional visitation for secondary caregivers, such as fathers, and increased infant visitation for women who are not pre-release eligible. Our second bill is the Primary Caretakers Bill, which originates from the National Council of Incarcerated Women and Girls and has been passed in states such as Massachusetts, Tennessee, and Missouri. This is a bill that allows caretakers to remain with their dependents. When a person is convicted of a nonviolent crime, the Primary Caretakers Bill would allow a judge to consider whether that person is a caretaker for a dependent. And in this case, caretaker, a dependent would be considered an elderly person, or it could be a child. If the judge determines that the convicted person is a caretaker of a dependent, the judge is asked not to send the person to prison or jail, but rather to a suitable community alternative. We believe both of these bills will help improve the health of incarcerated mothers and their infants in Montgomery County. As we enter the 2022 session, we look forward to the Montgomery County delegation's support on the Prevention of Forced Infant Separation Act and the Primary Caretakers Bill to ensure that families in Montgomery County are kept together and that infants get the head start that they need. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a question from Delegate Cullison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not a question, but a comment. And first of all, I want to thank everyone who was here speaking to the needs for mental health. I mean, we have certainly seen as a delegation and as a community at large the needs that we have here. And I know that this delegation is committed to supporting organizations like NAMI and Everymind and looking forward to the implementation of 988, which doesn't happen until next summer under the best of circumstances. In the meantime, there is currently a number that is available. It is 3 digits. It is 211. If you dial 211 24/7, if you need, and actually if you do 211 press 1, you will go automatically to a trained mental health specialist and who will be able to take, work with you there or send you to, get you the help you need and the resources that you need. So I would ask that we, make sure that people know that this resource is available. In addition, for those who are chronically depressed, they can sign up for weekly call-ins, callbacks from members of the 211 certified mental health specialist, just to check in and see how things are going. If you need help, if you, how the week has gone. But this is something that a person can voluntarily sign up for. So I know folks who are here tonight and those who might be listening to the recording, it's just a way for us to make sure that people know about an existing resource, another existing resource. Stephanie NAMI is fabulous and phenomenal, and I honor your work. But just so that people know that they have that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Cullison. We'll now start on our next panel, which will include Shruti Bhatnagar from the Sierra Club of Montgomery County, Carl Held from Montgomery County Climate Action Plan Coalition, Walter Weiss, Montgomery County Faith Alliance for Climate Solutions, David Peterson, Montgomery County Chapter Military Officers Association of America, Lynn Nash with the Commissioned Officers Association, excuse me, Barbara Kofel, Citizens Against Beltway Expansion, Janet Gallant, don'twiden270.org, Sally Stoltz, individual, and Linda Rosendorf, individual. And just a reminder, for the individuals, you each get 2 minutes, the organization's 3 minutes, and we'll start with Shruti.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Shruti Bhatnagar, and I'm the chair of the Sierra Club Montgomery County Group. Today, I will be sharing 2 priorities of the Sierra Club Maryland for 2022. The Maryland chapter of the Sierra Club and a coalition of environmental organizations have made the enactment of the Environmental Human Rights Amendment to the Maryland Constitution a priority for 2022. The proposed amendment would raise the right to a healthful environment to the level of constitutional protection. It sets an expectation for the government to protect our environment and helps set the guide rails within which governments should seek to operate. Several other states have enacted similar amendments. In New York, voters overwhelmingly approved a similar amendment earlier this month, with nearly 69% of the voters approving it. In Pennsylvania, the governor has within recent weeks taken executive steps to strengthen environmental justice actions in that state, based in part on Pennsylvania's constitution. By elevating the right to a healthful environment at the same level as such fundamental rights as freedom of the press, religion, and speech, the amendment would provide constitutionally based protections in addition to those set forth in existing environmental laws and regulations. The amendment also makes explicit the state's role as a steward for future generations. There are neighborhoods in Maryland whose children and adults, too often minority and low income, are exposed to high levels of pollution and in turn have high rates of asthma and other indicators of unhealthy conditions. Our bay is threatened by pollution that can make fish, crabs, and oysters unsafe in some places and amounts. The amendment is expected to provide significant benefit to marginalized areas of the state that have borne disproportionate health impacts from pollution and other environmental degradation. The proposed amendment for Maryland would help ensure that this generation and future generations of Marylanders share in a clean and healthful environment. We hope the delegation will continue to oppose Governor Hogan's 27495 toll road boondoggle. This is not a congestion relief plan. It removes an existing lane that is free 21 hours a day on weekdays and turns it into a hot lane. Removing a lane will increase congestion. The cost of toll lanes is an equity concern. The maximum toll rate when the express lane would open in 2026 will be over $4 a mile. At over $4 a mile, the rush hour cost to go to the 12 miles from Rockville to the American Legion Bridge would be approximately $50 each way, which is not affordable to most working families and creates inequity. We look forward to working with you in the 2022 General Assembly session on all the bills that will be a priority and that the Sierra Club will be supporting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll now turn to Carl Held.
Thank you, Senator Kramer, and thank you to all the members of the Montgomery County delegation for this public hearing. My name is Carl Held. I'm speaking today on behalf of the 14-member organizations of the Montgomery County Climate Action Plan Coalition. Together, we advocate for comprehensive, consequential, and equitable actions to address the widely recognized climate emergency in which we currently find ourselves. The coalition encourages to enact the following climate-related bills during the 2022 session, as well as others highlighted in our written testimony. First, we recommend passage of a reintroduced Climate Solutions Now Act. It is critical that the bill retain its goal of a statewide 60% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 and net zero by 2045. To help achieve this goal, we support provisions that address the electrification of school bus fleets and states' vehicle fleets. We also urge that there be provisions for energy efficiency requirements for larger buildings and also for new commercial and buildings and homes to be electrified. Second, we urge an enactment of a renewable portfolio cleanup bill, which would designate only wind, solar, geothermal, wastewater, and small hydro as clean energy. Maryland's definition of renewable currently includes several polluting energy sources such as trash incineration and factory farm biogas. This must be corrected. Third, we support a reintroduced low-income energy efficiency bill. Low-income, often minority families in particular, face more barriers to address energy efficiency because they tend to live in older buildings with mold, lead, and other health issues. Enacting this bill will codify a common sense 1% energy savings goal for low-income residents as part of the Empower program. We also urge you to override two of the bills passed last year that Governor Hogan vetoed, that you passed during the 2021 Maryland legislative session. The first is the Advanced Clean Energy and Clean Energy Innovation Investment and Initiatives Act, HB 419, which expands funding for the Maryland Clean Energy Center and the Maryland Energy Innovation Institute to implement an accelerator program for Maryland-based technology companies engaged in clean energy innovation. The second is the Transit Safety and Investment Act, HB 114, which helps close the gap in the Maryland Transit Administration's significant maintenance backlog so that people have the option of taking safe and reliable public transit operated by MTA rather than relying on private gas-powered vehicles. So I want to thank you in advance for your favorable support for these recommendations. The Montgomery County CAP Coalition is committed to helping the county to reach its climate action goals and stands ready to work with you at the state level in any way we can to ensure success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Held. Shout out to Delegate Chi and Senator Feldman, who were the sponsors of the clean energy bill that Mr. Held mentioned. Walter Weiss is not here, so we'll go to David Peterson. David Peterson. Okay, let me jump down to Barbara. Oh.
Can you hear me?
Oh, there you go. Thank you, Mr. Peterson.
Okay. Good evening, delegation members. My name is Dave Peterson, a resident of District 19, and I'm a retired captain of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Commission Corps, which is headquartered right here in Montgomery County. I am the current president of the Montgomery County chapter of the Military Officers Association of America, the largest chapter in the state. Thank you for this opportunity to communicate with you together as a delegation. Among other things, this chapter is an active participant in legislative advocacy efforts at the federal, state, and local levels on issues of interest to and concern to the uniformed services community. I have an active and engaged voting members who are constituents of each of you. We respect your efforts each year, and we hope that you respect ours. The Montgomery County chapter supports the organized efforts of the Maryland Military Coalition to convey to our elected representatives our support and arguments for a specific group of current issues that we ask respectfully you to consider as the General Assembly session begins, and then advance them in the legislative process. I have provided Ms. Strayer with a current listing of the coalition's legislative priorities and goals so that you may see the nature of legislative issues that we'll be advocating for. Two examples: finally eliminating Maryland income tax on military retired pay to help make Maryland more competitive in attracting highly qualified retirees to our state. And then also the Veterans Trust Fund checkoff on donations on tax returns are two of the issues that we have consistently supported in past sessions. I just want to conclude my brief remarks tonight by saying that you may expect to hear from my chapter members on these and other veterans and uniformed service legislation whenever the coalition asks us to reach out to you in advocacy. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. I believe Lynn Nash is not here, so we will go to Barbara Cope.
Thank you very much, Chair Corman, Chair Kramer, and to the entire delegation. My name is Barbara Sopel, and I'm co-chair of Citizens Against Beltway Expansion. We've asked you previously to advance legislation to address the 495-270 toll lanes and legislation to reform the process for establishing future public-private partnerships. We're grateful to many of you for your work on this. With each passing day, it becomes more evident that the toll lanes would not improve travel for most drivers and would put taxpayers at risk. MDOT issued a supplemental draft environmental impact statement for the toll lanes on October 1. Appendix A of the supplemental DEIS compares travel times in the general lanes if the tolls were added with travel times if the toll lanes were not added. Drivers in the morning rush hour traveling from I-370, where the toll lanes begin, to the American Legion Bridge would save 2 minutes and 30 seconds if the toll lanes were added. However, when traveling home during the evening rush hour, drivers would lose 1 minute and 48 seconds. So after putting up with 5 years of construction delays, drivers in the general lanes would be rewarded with a round trip commute that is 42 seconds shorter. How can we justify the damage to the environment, to the climate, and to our communities for a 42-second improvement in daily commutes? MDOT's Innovative Congestion Management Program has recently been partially activated on the southbound lanes of I-270. When fully activated, MDOT estimates it will reduce rush hour travel from Frederick to the Beltway by up to 30 minutes. The program will be installed on the northbound lanes next year. This program shows that congestion can be effectively addressed without toll lanes. Not only will the toll lanes not work, they could put taxpayers at substantial risk. State Treasurer Nancy Kopp cautioned in a report on the pre-development agreement with Transurban that, quote, there are significant uncertainties around the costs, risks, and ultimate benefits of the Phase P3 agreement. We should heed her warning. We understand that Delegate Solomon will reintroduce his bill to reform the process for future P3 projects to ensure oversight and protect state revenues. We urge all of you to be forceful advocates for this bill. We also urge you to work with us to protect our wallets and our communities from the 495-270 toll lanes. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara, and I apologize for being unable to pronounce your name after 4 years of doing this with you. Janet? Janet?
Thank you. I'm Janet Gallant with don'twiden270.org. Two big reasons the governor has succeeded in getting his toll lane project this far. First, MDOT brazenly withholds key information. Second, too many elected officials do not call Secretary Slater on it, do not insist that MDOT back up its claims. Resulting uninformed decisions by Peter Francho and others have pushed this harmful project along in a very active way, but also contributing to the governor's success are passive decisions by elected officials, including some of you, to treat the project as a done deal, do nothing more than occasionally voice opposition, or say we have to do something about congestion and this is better than nothing. At last week's MDOT Roadshow, many of you showed strong appreciation for Secretary Slater, but we can't trust his words and actions on this P3. He's shown you over and over that MDOT is going to advance the governor's project, even if that means doing unforced harm to your communities and constituents, worsening inequality in this county, and hiding the facts even from elected officials. Here's what one official, Treasurer Nancy Kopp, said in September, quote, "We never saw the argument for doing this project as a public-private partnership, and I still have not gotten a clear answer with numbers laid out," end quote. Last month, Secretary Slater told the Board of Public Works that $45 million in new project costs would be reimbursed from the contractor's development rights fee. But turns out Mr. Slater was on record back in June saying that same development rights fee was already fully committed. This P3 is built on smoke and mirrors, meant to obscure, not inform. Digging into MDOT's mountains of documentation has required on our side a network of 50+ advocacy organizations, teamed with some smart, effective elected officials. Thank you to those of you here. Public agencies and experts in environmental law, transportation, finance, and more. We can share with you everything we've learned. You can't let this P3 stand unchallenged now and in the coming session. You've each got a bully pulpit, political and organizational relationships, the attention of the public and press. Right now, submit written comments to MDOT on the P3 supplemental draft environmental impact statement. By virtue of your position, whatever you send will have power with the federal reviewers. Use your public voice to broadcast your indignation and every contact and opportunity you have to fight this attack on your constituents. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now turn to Sally.
Thank you. My
My name is Sally Stoltz and I live in Rockville. First, I want to thank you again for all the bills you have sponsored, backed, or voted for, which were designed to prevent the catastrophe of Governor Hogan's 495-270 P3 toll road. Today, I have good news. At last Monday's MDOT Roadshow, Mayor Newton explained to Secretary Slater that we have observed and documented that traffic on lower I-270 is almost always moving at or above the speed limit. She asked him about the I-270 Innovative Congestion Management Project begun in 2017. It's now 77% complete, and Secretary Slater enthusiastically praised its success. The project added new lanes and dramatically improved traffic speeds on lower I-270, and the project's website states lower 270 will be solved through 2040. Details are in my written testimony. Building the toll road on lower I-270 would rip up all these improvements and take away the extra lanes they just added. The toll road would only have 5 general lanes, whereas with these improvements, lower I-270 now has 7 or 8 lanes in most places. At the July Transportation Planning Board meeting, one member complained that a trip from Montgomery Village Avenue to Shady Grove Road took 45 minutes and said that something has to be done. The member was supporting the toll road, but the trip the member described would be longer if the toll road were built because the toll road would not go to Montgomery Village Avenue and would not have a Shady Grove exit. I realize legislators can't be experts on everything they've been asked to vote on, but this project is massive with red flags everywhere. I respectfully ask 3 things. First, please take time to study the enormous concerns that have been brought up by experts on every aspect of this project. Second, please enact legislation to forbid taking away the new local and express lanes on I-270, which were part of the I-270 Innovative Congestion Management Program. And third, enact legislation requiring MDOT to seek federal infrastructure funds to rebuild the American Legion Bridge. Thank you so much for listening and for all your service and hard work.
Thank you. Let's now turn to Linda Rosendorf. Linda, are you on?
I think so. Can you hear me?
You can, please go ahead.
Okay. I'm speaking this evening regarding the I-495 and I-270 managed lanes project. I call for you to maintain oversight of all related documents and who is bearing the costs of this project. Montgomery County needs to have a multimodal transportation plan. The recently released supplemental draft environmental impact statement is replete with inadequate and incorrect information. You must weigh in hard that the state cannot proceed with the proposed plan. The entire project is being rushed forward without adequate data. A traffic model that is valid into the future of a 50-year contract must be developed with accuracy, not politics, as the focus. Moreover, there must be a valid fiscal analysis that considers other funding mechanisms. The recently passed federal infrastructure bill should be seriously considered for highway and bridge improvements, as well as public transit, instead of contracts to foreign private companies. Revenue from toll is overstated and puts Maryland taxpayers at financial risk. Moreover, the environmental impact statement enormously trivializes environmental impacts to our gas, air, and water. The impact on greenhouse gases, wetlands, stormwater management, and fiscal and forest canopies is significant. In conclusion, you must maintain oversight of environmental and fiscal harm this project will cause. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Ms. Rosendorf. We folks are at the final panel for tonight. So we're going to begin that panel with Diana Conway, Safe Healthy Playing Fields. You will have 3 minutes. Joe St. George, HBCU College of Plant-Based Lifestyle Medicine. You will have 3 minutes. Followed by, and Mr. Sachs may not be here, but Howard Sachs, you'll have 2 minutes if you're with us. Suzanne Emerson, 2 minutes. Brian Kramer, 2 minutes. Ellen Ryan, 2 minutes. and wrap up with Donna Gentry with 2 minutes. And since most of you are not here at the very beginning of the meeting to hear that Chair Kumar Barve was missing hearing more from me and indicated how he longs to hear my voice, I'll be doing an interpretive reading from Leviticus for Chair Barve's behalf. So please stay with us if you're so inclined.
You have made my evening, Senator.
With that, Diana Conway, you're up.
Thank you. And I'm not going to comment on Leviticus or any of the rest of it. Thank you, Senator Kramer and Delegate Corman, and thanks for the opportunity to talk to you tonight. My name is Diana Conway. I'm here as president of the nonprofit Safe Healthy Playing Fields to alert you to a bill coming your way and to ask for your support. It's a very straightforward bill to insert a little transparency and accountability for, wait for it, plastic sports fields. The bill sets up a chain of custody requirement on all plastic turf fields with a simple reporting to MDE. I want to thank our bill sponsors, Delegate Mary Lehman and our own Senator Cheryl Kagan. I think of this chain of custody bill a little bit like parenting. Just tell MDE where you got it, and then tell MDE who took it next. That's it. The tire industry is on board. The Synthetic Turf Council is on board. And MDE says it's manageable and has no significant impact on the agency's budget. Here are 4 reasons why we need this simple bill. First is the volume of waste. Each full-size plastic field amounts to 250 tons of mixed toxic plastic waste. There are over 15,000 fields in the US. My screen just disappeared. Probably more, but there's no inventory. And there's no inventory in Maryland. But these plastic fields are scattered across our public and private schools, our park systems, our universities, et cetera. They have to be replaced every 7 to 10 years and then go somewhere. You may remember Maryland Matters ran a piece featuring our work on this issue, which was also picked up by The Atlantic and by Salon, I'm not name dropping, documenting these massive dump sites that are politely called storage. In addition to the volume, the second issue is toxicity. Synturf comes in many flavors, but they are all non-renewable petroleum products loaded with their own blend of toxic chemicals like PFAS, endocrine disruptors, carcinogens, lead, zinc, phthalates, flame retardants, and much more. The toxicity can be varied, but it is undeniable. The third reason we need the bill is the unfair cost shifting of improper disposal. Municipalities and communities did not realize they were signing up to handle 250 tons of plastic every 7 to 10 years for every field. So we have contractors being paid to, quote, take it away. As we are all painfully recognizing, there is no away. We are in a closed loop. And finally, the chain of custody is important because there's no recycling for used synthetic turf anywhere in the US, and there never has been. This is now formally acknowledged, including by the global Synturf manufacturer Tenkate earlier this year in formal testimony. Let's find out where these products go after removal. Where do you get it and where do you put it? This bill helps our communities stay safe from irresponsible actors, unfair cost shifting, illegal dumping, and toxic contamination. And we want to thank our legislative champions, Senator Kagan and Delegates Lehman and Solomon, and the organizations that have supported this goal in their testimony, like the Women's Democratic Club. I would be very happy to take any questions. I ask for your support, and I thank you for the important work that you do helping us get into our best future in Maryland. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Conway. And now we have Joe St. George. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, members of the delegation. My name is Joe St. George, and I'm the chair of the HBCU College of Plant-Based Lifestyle Medicine, a Bowie, Maryland 501c3 made up of African-American plant-based physicians around the country, whose mission is to educate and train HBCU students, alumni, and medical professionals of color in the practice of prescribing whole plant-based food as medicine and the use of evidence-based, the 10 laws of lifestyle medicine to treat, prevent, and reverse chronic degenerative diseases in communities of color. As you are aware, we are in 2 health crises. The first is the COVID-19 pandemic, and the second, which existed before the pandemic, that's the epidemic of chronic diseases, specifically heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, and obesity, which the CDC has reported are the key determinants for severe COVID and death. The CDC has reported that over 60% of COVID deaths to this date have included individuals who suffered from comorbidities and obesity. While Maryland has given all its efforts in enforcing all approved interventions to stop the spread and deaths from COVID through mask mandates, social distancing, washings of hands, and vaccines, the latest data has shown that COVID-related hospitalizations and death have not stopped in the state and around the country. While they have reduced, COVID is not going anywhere, signaling the need to add new medical interventions to the toolkit or arsenal of the war against COVID. And that is to change the focus of the war to a focus on attacking chronic disease and not fighting over misinformation regarding the efficacies of vaccines, but rather adding to the arsenal through the use of scientifically proven and effective plant-based lifestyle medicine, which 3 global medical studies, including a Harvard University study, has shown that those who eat a plant-based diet have a 73% reduced risk of severe COVID and of 53% reduced risk of contracting COVID based on plant-based lifestyle medicine, which provides a double bang for the buck because it not only immediately addresses severe COVID or reducing, but it also helps to reduce the #1 killer, and that's heart disease, and the most costly disease to Maryland, which is $60 billion in diabetes. So we ask you to focus and put priority on 2 bills. One bill that was introduced twice last year is the plant-based meal bill for prisons and hospitals to give inmates the option to be able to select plant-based meals while they're in the prison to reduce the deaths. There are a third of the inmates have gotten COVID, over 2% have died, and we're spending $150 million in healthcare costs that can be reduced by giving them the option to eat plant-based. Second bill is we're introducing also now is the health equity exemption training bill.
Ms. St. George, I'll ask you to wrap it up, please.
Yes, this bill would be an exemption for those who don't want to be vaccinated without a religious exemption or a medical exemption, to give them the option to take a 30-day online plant-based medicine training course and be tested and wear masks so that they can get tools to address the real issue, and that's chronic disease, and not to leave them without an avenue for receiving health.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good to hear your voice. It appears as though Howard Sachs is not with us. So let's go to Suzanne Emerson, please. You have 2 minutes.
Hello, my name is Suzanne Emerson. I'm a resident of Kensington, and I'm here to talk about the need for civil statute of limitations reform on child sex abuse. I've been advocating for this issue in Maryland for 3 years alongside other individuals, groups, including Maryland Catholics for Action, who you heard from earlier, survivors of child sex abuse, and their families. We've learned through research that adverse experiences we face in childhood change the structure and function of our brains and have a lasting impact into adulthood. The trauma associated with childhood sexual abuse too often leads to PTSD, alcohol and opioid abuse, depression, suicide, and other poor health and social outcomes. The economic burden of child sexual abuse is over $9 billion annually. It is clear that survivors of abuse can never forget what happened to them. So why should we give abusers that ability? Children who are abused by their guardians, parents, family members, teachers, faith leaders, coaches, family friends, and neighbors should be able to seek justice whenever they are able to come forward, regardless of how much time has passed. We must eliminate the civil statute of limitations on child sex abuse in Maryland and provide a look-back window that gives survivors a path to justice. So please support the passing of the Hidden Predator Act this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Emerson. We're moving on to Brian Kramer, please.
All right, good evening. It is so late, so thank you all for hearing me out and being here. So I'm here to talk about the most exciting thing that you wait all evening to hear about, which is school boards. There's a lot of bills about the school board before the delegation, including how they're elected, how many of them are elected, and some regarding compensation. But I want to focus on compensation broadly and some of the priorities that the delegation should focus on. The bill to increase the compensation of the school board members is not being reintroduced despite it trying to be enacted last March of 2020. And so I think, in my view, we need to bring that back. It is extremely important that we rapidly increase the compensation of our school boards, especially across the country, but even in Montgomery County, we're falling very behind, as the School Board Compensation Committee found almost 2 years ago, which is kind of crazy. I can't stress enough how much of a good government reform this is, especially when we're talking about a position where you're making $25,000 a year. It makes it very inaccessible for most people. And when I ask people, hey, are you interested in running for school board? They say, no, I can't afford it. I can't live on $25,000 in Montgomery County, Maryland. There's just no way you can do it, especially if you don't have a larger support system. And so I really want the delegation to focus on this issue. In my testimony, I provided a lot of examples of where we are in the state as it relates to school board compensation and as it relates to where we are in the country. In the state, we're doing pretty okay. We've got 25, Howard is like 15, and it just drops from there. But in the nation, we're doing very badly. In fact, Florida actually has a lot of school districts that are paid way more, and they're about the same enrollment. So please consider this legislation being brought back and my written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. We are moving on to Ellen Ryan, please.
Good evening, delegation. My name is Ellen Ryan of Rockville. 4 years ago, when a generic postcard fell out of the weekly advertisement bundle in my mail, we Marylanders became aware of the Hogan administration's plan to widen I-270 and 495 and add toll lanes. The governor said this unnecessary move would come at, quote, virtually no cost to taxpayers, unquote. He was wrong. The project has been the focus ever since of our state highway administration. And whoops. And we've had dozens of public meetings, thousands of hours of study, tens of thousands of letters and phone calls, and untold pages and posters and transcripts and meeting rooms. All of this costs, and all of this could have gone to better use. If and when the toll lanes produce money, the foreign companies that built them will collect first. The state will get the leftovers. County Council member Reamer poo-pooed me when I told him that, but it's been proven in state after state dealing with companies whose only business is imposing toll lanes on drivers. Some of these projects have gone bankrupt. We've already experienced that with the Purple Line nest, and look where that left us, literally in a hole, virtually no cost. Here's another way taxpayers can lose money. We haven't even discussed the multiple billions of dollars the county and its municipalities will have to pay to rebuild bridges that are too small for widened highways, re-engineered on and off ramps, and adjusting water and gas pipelines. Got to pay for that, even if we never use the roads. The governor's pet project is a boondoggle Maryland cannot afford. And by Maryland, I mean us. Please, delegation, protect us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan. Not that this is any pressure, but Donna Gentry, you are closing up this evening's hearing. So please jump on in.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I'm Donna Gentry from Rockville. I also oppose adding toll lanes to I-270 and 495, the public-private partnership P3 plan. My points tonight are taken directly from a piece in the Washington Post on November 12, written by Jeremy Muller. The plan has environmental concerns. Also, a recent study revealed that the additional toll lanes wouldn't lessen traffic. Finally, the cost. Let me focus on the cost. P3s are paid for using private financing from investors who expect high returns from the tolls. But too often, these companies go bankrupt, leaving the cost to the state, such as happened with the Purple Line. Likewise, in Indiana in 2017, a P3 toll project went bankrupt, and that cost that state $137 million more than if traditional public financing had been used. Our proposed project anticipates cost overruns. The Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission estimates $2 billion for utility relocation. And on November 3rd, the Board of Public Works needed to approve an additional $45 million for engineering consulting fees on top of the $135 million already paid to the consultant. Finally, P3s have complex contracts that diminish risk while maximizing profit. Transurban would be guaranteed shortfall payments from increased tolls or from NDOT and compensation for events that might cause a drop in revenue. The bottom line, the cost to the state and taxpayers is too high and too risky. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Ms. Gentry, thank you very much. And I would just like to say thank you to everyone who signed up and spoke to the delegation this evening. This is what democracy looks like. We appreciate your taking the time out of your evening to share with us your thoughts, your concerns, what's important to you. Without having this opportunity, we don't know what's going on, and we want to be tuned in to the community. So thank you for that. My thanks to, as I said at the beginning, hardest working delegation in Annapolis, and that's Montgomery County. My thanks to Rebecca Stryer. We had some challenges getting this going this evening. Unfortunately, that's what technology can bring. And one of these days, maybe we'll be back in person. And I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Chair Mark Corman, to thank him as well. So Chair Corman, the ball's in your court.
Thanks. I just want to add my thanks to Katie Hardy, who also helped out on the technical side of things. And just a reminder to our colleagues, our local bill hearings will be via Zoom on December 13th and December 15th. So look forward to seeing everybody then. And of course, the week before that, live and in person in Annapolis. Everybody have a great night. Thank you.